Right, so I'm just going to repeat myself a little bit. Pardon me for that. I've started the recording. So again, we'll talk about Excel Power Maps in the next class. But in this class, we're going to talk about tables, how to use tables, the benefits of using tables in Excel, and how we can actually maintain data properly in Excel. Autofill and flash fill, which is a really useful feature in 2013, probably one of the most important reasons why you should have Excel 2013 is a function called flash fill, which is based on a PhD student's research, right? So we've got a quick comment there, and let me just see who's got the comment. Right, so Manmeet I think has a question. So let me unmute Manmeet. Hi Manmeet, did you have a question? Okay, so Manmeet, your hand was raised, probably accidentally. So I'm going to unraise your hand. Thanks a lot. If anybody has a question, do let me know. Okay. Right, so Manmeet is asking, is there something on the screen? I can't see anything if there is. Okay, so Manmeet, please click on your GoToWebinar panel and you will be able to see the screen. Can everybody confirm that you can look at my presentation? Right, I just want everyone to confirm that you can see my screen. Okay, so I'm just getting some comments here. Right, so Nazia, Nida, Ambuj, Hari are able to see the screen. Okay, Manmeet is able to see it as well now. Okay, fantastic. Great folks, so we'll learn about this exciting feature called flash fill, and the whole reason why we're even talking about Excel is that almost everything that we do in Excel tends to be inefficient, right? And this can be a huge challenge in the analytics industry, right? When you're not actually doing things efficiently. Okay. Okay, so Subhabrata is having some trouble hearing me, so I'm probably going to call Subhabrata on the phone and see if I can actually keep him with me on the phone. So just give me a second here. Subhabrata, I would also like to see if you can log in using your mobile phone, and you should be able to hear me. Just a second here. All right, folks, just give me a second here while we resolve this. All right, folks. So sorry about that interruption, people. And I'm going to move ahead now, and we're going to talk about how do you actually copy a formula in Excel. So for this, I'm going to open up my Excel sheet, and I'm going to open up exercise 1A. All right. So I request everyone to open exercise 1A. All right, and please say done when you have the file open. Okay. All right, thanks people. Thanks for opening up that particular Excel sheet. So what you see here in the sheet, right, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. You see the amount in Indian rupees here of sales that have happened. And this goes all the way down, right? And then you also see tax, right? And tax, if you look at it, is B4 multiplied by 3%, which is 352 multiplied by 3%, right? It works out to the tax in this particular case. So the tax is, 10.56. So I have a simple question. If I have to, apply this formula to the rest of this data, how am I going to do it? And you can reply in the chat box. In what way can I just quickly apply this formula to all of this data? So if you drag this down, right, if you drag your cursor down, you'll realize that it's 5003 cells of data. Okay. So I've got some answers coming up now, and Nida says drag it down, right? Okay, control double click says Ambuj Mittal. Okay, okay. So look, 95% people will say, drag. Okay, and this is the reality today, is that when you ask this question, close to 95% globally will say drag, right? Now, there's a challenge with that, and I'll show you the challenge with that very shortly. But there is another 5% that will say something to the effect of, why don't you double click? Okay. So let me come to this, in a very short while. But before that, let's assume for a second that we need to drag this formula, right? Here we go. So I've started dragging now, and I'm waiting, and this is 5003 rows, right? So this is a little bit like sitting in a train and looking outside the train, right? You're bored, you have nothing to do, and you're doing a manual repetitive activity till such time that you drag this to 5,000 rows. Now imagine that if this is 1 million rows, which is often the case in analytics, right? Imagine if this is 97 million rows of data. 97 million rows. So are you going to drag? So I have a simple question. If it's 97 million rows of data, are you going to drag? So let me have a yes or a no. 97 million rows of data. Okay. Come on, folks. So yeah, so Amboj, Hari, Anish says no. So what's a better way? See, one of the answers I got, and Nida says no, is double click, right? So where do I double click? Well, if you click on this cell, right, 10.56, at the corner of the cell, you will notice there's a small square, right? So if I were to show you over here, look in the red dot and look in the center of the red dot. Everybody can see the small square there, right? Now what happens when I double click on that small square? So quick thing, Subhabrata and Swami, could you chat to the entire audience? So you need to select entire audience from the drop down. Right now you're chatting with me privately. Okay. All right, folks. So now watch what happens, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually zoom in, okay? And when I zoom in, you will see here that this becomes a plus sign on the corner of the cell, and I double click this, right? So some of you told me, why don't you just double click this? Okay. Now some magic just happened, right? The moment I double clicked, it actually copied the formula. Whoops, it has copied the formula till here, C14, but it did not copy the formula in C15. So can anyone tell me why did it not copy the formula to C15? Right. Alright, so everyone says blank cell. Ambuj, Hari, Nida, right? There's no data over there. So my question to you is, right, that this blank cell may occur at many points of time in this particular data set. So what do we do now? Well, most probably all human beings will actually drag this down one cell and it's 0. Now they'll double click. Oops, they're stuck again. So they'll drag it down once more. Now they'll double click and they're happy, and whoops, there you go again. So how often are you going to do this, right? Is this the scientific way to do it? Is this the most efficient way that you actually want to go about operating when you have 97 million rows, right? Okay, so Subhabrata, no option, no problem. I can see that you have a challenge with your chat box, no problem. So there's a better way, folks, right? There's a better way to actually do this. The first question I want to ask you is, when you double click here, right, and you go down, over here, why did Excel not automatically make it 0? Why did Excel not look at this blank and make this 0, right? Can someone answer that question? Think hard, folks, right? So Subhabrata, please stay in the webinar. Okay. Okay. So very good. So Rahul says considers it outside the table. Hari says it's not in the array. Missing value is not equivalent to 0, says Manmeet, who very good answer there, because the data is ending in the 14th row. So suppose I was Excel. So Neha says it ends in the 14th row. So suppose that I was Excel and I actually, drag this, right? How would you actually do this, right? Suppose you drag this down, it becomes a 0. So now Excel understands that you want this formula to be dragged down even though there's no data here in this cell. But Excel is not doing it, okay, on its own. It is asking you to drag this formula down. Does anyone have an idea why? Why is Microsoft hesitant to apply this formula on this cell C15? Okay, what is the reason? What could you do to Microsoft if something went wrong? Okay, suppose Microsoft applied this formula to this cell, what would you do to Microsoft? Okay, all right. Right, so Ambuj says, okay, double click will copy to all the rows, Excel will be slow. All right, so folks, I'm going to answer this for you. See, Excel is never going to decide where your data starts and ends. And Nida has actually answered the question in terms of you need to insert a table. But the reason you need to insert a table is Excel is not going to decide that this table ends over here or whether this table ends on C15 or C16. You need to decide that. The reason is if Excel decides, you may actually decide to sue Microsoft if there's a problem. And you could get millions of dollars, right? If you ask why did Microsoft apply this formula to the next cell. So the right way of doing this is if you click on the amount, you need to insert a table into Excel and tell Excel, where your data starts and where your data ends. And I'm going to do that now. So I click on the cell B3 and I've clicked on B3 and I actually probably select some data here and I say insert table. Okay. So when you go right on top, you have the option saying insert table and I click on that and it says where is the data for your table? And it says $B, $3 till $C, $6. But I know that my data is not till the 6th row. I'd actually gone all the way down and figured out that it's 5003 rows of data. So I'm going to delete 6 and I'm going to put 5003, right? And I say OK. And now watch what happens in a short while. I've actually told Excel that this is now my data. Okay, so let me scroll down. You'll notice a couple of things have happened. One is that I now have a filter, right? And it also seems to be very pleasing because I've got all of these nice colors, blue and white. But this is not the reason why this is important, right? The reason why this is important, and by the way, you can change the colors by going up to this section called design, and I could choose purple, I could choose orange, I could choose, whatever color that I like, right? Now if I say equal to 3.5% multiplied by 352, for example, and I press the enter button, you'll notice that the entire table, the formula gets copied, right? Thanks, Subhabrata. I'm glad you can hear me. So folks, go down and check all the way till 5003 rows. Your formula has got copied automatically, one shot, because you have inserted the table. Okay. So I'll show you this again, just in case folks want to, practice again. So I clicked on amount. I selected some of the rows. I went to insert table and then I deleted 6 and I put 5003, right? So can everyone try and practice this? I just got a request that someone wants me to repeat this. So I'm going to repeat this right now. Okay. All right. So just give me a second here. There we go. So please watch carefully. I have clicked on amount and I just select some data here, right? Maybe from B3, I select all the way till let's say C6 and I go up and I say insert table and I click there after 6 and I delete 6 and I put 5003 because there's 5003 rows in my data and I say OK. And the moment I say OK, Excel has inserted a table inside the spreadsheet. Now, when I actually type out my formula saying equal to 3% multiplied by 352, I click on 352, I press enter, it's actually going to copy this formula to the whole table. So I'm just going to delete out all the rest here, and I'm going to delete this as well. I'll just say equal to 3% multiplied by 352, press enter, right? And you will find that it will actually copy this to my entire table. Okay, so I want everyone to practice this now and tell me once you've practiced inserting a table inside Excel, and after that we will proceed to our next exercise. So can everyone practice this? Click on amount and select some of the rows, say insert table, click OK. Say insert table and delete whatever number there is and put 5003 rows. It will insert 5003 rows table into your Excel sheet, and then you say equal to 3% multiplied by 352, and it will copy the formula to your entire Excel sheet. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to practice this at your end before I move ahead. Alright, so folks, the spirit of the accelerator is that you need to practice some of this in class. So please practice right now and let me know. This is really important. Okay. Right, so I've got some chat comments. Hari is done, Subhabrata is done. Sumit, I had shown you again. I hope you're able to practice as well. How about everyone else? Akash is done, Swami is done. Okay. Anish is done. Yeah, so the formula will get copied to the entire table, Nazia, right? If you want to customize, you might need to use a macro, okay? Ambush 2013 is not required for this exercise, but it will be required for subsequent exercises. So Sumit is also done, okay? Everyone is done. Let me see if someone's raising a hand here, okay, very quickly. Poonam probably has a question. Let me see if I can unmute Poonam. Hi Poonam, did you have a question for me?
No, I don't have any question. Just
Okay,
tell
okay.
me because I'm not getting chat box. So I'm unable to respond.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. You can raise your hand and I'll unmute you. But on the console, Poonam, you will see the chat box inside the console. So I'm saying hi to you now. You will see it flashing there in the chat box. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, and Ankit, I think if you watch the video again, you will be clear. You have to select all the way till 5003. Okay? All right. So you can practice later, folks. Don't worry. If you are not able to practice right now, you can always practice later. Okay. So now I'll show you something else, right? One of the interesting things is that I see that people drag a formula, and there are situations where you need to drag a formula. For example, 3% of 352, and now I've got to drag this, right? There are certain situations where you need to drag this formula down your whole data set, right? So what is a good way of doing it? And I'm always perplexed about this, right? If you actually look at it, you don't have any reason to look at the data when you're actually dragging a formula. Yet people drag a formula, like this, and then they're looking at the data while they're dragging the formula. And I've never quite understood that, right? So what if you were to, minimize this Excel sheet? So in the bottom right corner of your Excel, you have the option to zoom out. Okay, here you go. So I've actually zoomed out now completely, okay, and my data is probably up to a certain point, right? And I'm going to zoom out completely from this Excel sheet like so. I'm going to see if I can just drag like this, right? All the way till the bottom till I feel I've actually dragged the formula over my entire data. and then I'm going to zoom back out, and you'll see that you've actually been able to drag it by using the zoom in zoom out feature. So if you ever do need to use the zoom in and zoom out feature along with the drag function, it makes a lot of sense, right? But I don't see people doing that, and that always perplexes me, why people don't actually zoom out when they drag a formula. Okay, so if you ever have to drag, well, that's the right way to actually drag a formula across an Excel sheet. So why should you insert a table? Okay, what's the whole purpose of inserting a table? And I'm going to show you now one more example. Let's come to the second tab, which is called more data. Okay, can everyone come to the second tab called more data? And I'm going to highlight that on the screen now. It's over here, more data. I need everyone to click on more data. Okay. Right, and can you just give me a quick, yes, once you're there on more data? Okay. So Sumit, Subhadra, Ambuj, thank you, you're there. Is everybody there on more data? Okay, great. So Rahul's there, Nida as well. Okay, fantastic. So what you'll notice here is that you've got a product ID over here in cell number A4, and you have the amount in cell number B, 5 onwards, in fact column B, right? And then you've got some hypothetical percentages. So you've got, for example, a formula XY, which is 3% of amount. You've got a YA, which is 3% of XY. And then you've got QF, which is actually 3% of YA, right? So you've got some calculations that you've made over here, and you've got your raw data over here, right? And what's the advantage of actually inserting tables? And I'm going to show you all of the different advantages of inserting tables right now. So suppose I have to I get more data at the end of the month, right? So I had some data, but then someone gave me more data. So when the data came along, what I did was I decided that, okay, I'm actually going to copy this data from here. So I select from cell number H5 to cell number I10, and I say Control C, right? And I come here to cell number A11 and I paste my data over here, right? That's what you do all the time when you get fresh data. And now what you do is you actually go ahead and double click these formulas, right? And you apply these formulas, you double click on the corner and you actually apply the formulas to your whole data, right? Now that's a lot of manual effort. And then also, if you get data like this with blanks, then there's another challenge that you'll have to double click and drag as well. Okay, so what's the better way of doing this, right? And that's what we actually show folks here, that the best way that you want to do this is you want to keep a table inserted at all times in Excel. So again, coming back to why we insert tables, I'm going to select this whole data all the way from A4 to E10. Okay. So let me ask you a question. What's the smarter way of selecting this entire table? So I could select it by using my mouse. I could click on A4 and then go all the way till E10. But what's a smarter way of selecting this entire table? Can someone give me a shortcut in Excel? I'm going to wait for some responses. Okay, so Hari says, Control Shift A, and Rahul says Control A, and you'll be surprised, right? If you were in a Word document, right, and Ambud says Control down arrow. So if you were in a Word document, right, if I were to open any Word document, for example, let's just say I open a Word document over here right now, and it surprises me that, a particular behavior, now suppose I type out something in my Word document, right? And if I ask any of you, how do I select this entire document, right? So you'll all say Control A, and then I copy it using Control C. And everybody is able to answer, that question. Everybody is able to say that, hey, you know what? You just want to actually use Control A to actually select the entire text. But when you go to an Excel sheet and you have a table, then suddenly people have selective amnesia. They kind of forget that, you could use Control A to actually, select data in a particular table. So now this is something, Hari says Control Shift left. Okay, fantastic. So this is something that I just wanted to highlight, is that we tend to forget a familiar shortcut in an unfamiliar place. So click anywhere in the table and just press Control A once and you will select the entire table. So try it folks, click anywhere in the table, anywhere on this table and say Control A. And the moment you say that, you will actually select the entire table. Now I go to Insert, I go to Table and I say OK. Alright, so follow the steps. I clicked on the table, I said Control A and then I went to Insert and I inserted the table and I said OK. So on the face of it, nothing much has happened, right? You've got this blue and light blue and white formatting. You've got a couple of filters. But what's happened is, Microsoft now recognizes that this is your data and these are your formulas over here that have been calculated using this particular data. Now, if you were to put any additional data, below, thanks Subha brother. And now if you were to put any additional data, and I'm going to copy this additional data here from H5 all the way till I10, and I'm going to copy it, Control C, and I'm going to click on A11 and I'm going to paste the data. The moment I paste the data, you will notice that not only has the data got pasted, but all of the formulas automatically got populated over here, right? You did not have to actually populate the formulas on your data at all. Okay, not only that, right? So here's the other fun bit. Even if the data has gaps, okay, now that Excel knows that you've defined a table, Excel believes that everything that you add below it will also be a part of that table. And Microsoft is confident that you're not going to sue Microsoft. So if you were to select data with some gaps, right, like this, more data that has some gaps in it, okay, I'm going to select the data all the way from K5 to cell number L10. I'm going to drag it with my mouse and say Control A. By the way, if I click anywhere and I try to say Control A, it will not understand where my data is. So I need to actually select this data because of the gaps. And I'm going to go and paste it on cell number A17. So there we go. And the moment you do that, kaboom, in 1 second, Excel understands that this data is an extension of your table and populates the formulas. It is also able to resolve the fact that there are some gaps over here and it needs to work out these gaps and make it a 0, right? So it understands all of that and it's willing to do the hard work for you. Okay. My whole point is that over here, Excel is working for you and you're not working for Excel, right? Okay, so can we select data from multiple workbooks? Well, you can select it from any other workbook and paste it here, Hari, as long as it's in this format ID and amount. So the whole point is that you just need to make sure that it has the ID and the amount, and you can come and paste it over here from any particular workbook. So the important thing in that case for all of you to remember, right, and focus on this a little bit here, this is an important point. So you want to keep your data on the left hand side like so, okay, and you want to keep your calculations on the right hand side. So your calculations on the right and your data on the left is a better way of maintaining your Excel sheet. So I like to think of this as an Excel SOP, right? Does anyone know the full form of SOP? Can you put it in the chat box? What's an SOP? Right. So thanks a lot, Hari. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Ambuj. So I like to think of this as an Excel standard operating procedure, really, that will help you, is that you keep your data on the left wherever possible and you keep your calculations on the right. Because the challenge is if I were to insert another calculation here saying Swachh Bharat tax and I were to say that this is equal to 0.2%, and Mr. Modi has just introduced this 0.2%, multiplied by amount here, and I say enter. The challenge is now if I try and paste any additional data, it won't work, right? Because the formulas will not work out properly. There's going to be errors over here. So if you look at it, there's an error at the tip here saying that there's some inconsistent calculated formula. So this is the kind of errors that happen because we insert things that don't belong in the middle of data, which is a calculation. Okay, so I would strongly recommend that if you have a calculation, for example, Mr. Modi helped us by introducing the Swachh Bharat tax, if you believe he helped us, okay, then you want to actually say 0.2%, and multiply it by amount over here and keep it in the last column rather than keep it in between your data. So then you can copy ID and amount from multiple Excel sheets and put it here. Okay, great. So I want everyone to practice this now. Right, again, this is where we were. So you click on this, you say Control A, you go to Insert Table and click OK. And then you can copy your data and paste it over here. And you can even copy the data with the gaps and paste it over here as well, right? And it should work. So I'll wait for everyone to practice this and say done in the chat box, okay? And don't worry, if you're not able to practice, you can always practice later, but I'm going to give you the next 1 minute to practice this and say done in the chat box.
Minima! Minima! जल्दी आए मेरा पीसी सपोर्ट नहीं कर रहा एक्चुअली के लिए बोल रहे हैं ना तो एक्सेल ओपन करके नहीं हो रहा है
I'm sorry, it looks
प्रैक्टिस
like
करने के लिए देखो एक्सेल
there's some noise in the
आवाज भी
background.
आती है
So I'm actually going to mute all of the attendees. Okay, so I've muted everybody. Okay, so Subhabrata says he didn't get the last part where it was showing an error. You will not get that last part, Subhabrata, because I inserted a formula in between the data, right? So let me show you what I had done, okay? So I'll say Control Z a couple of times. So what I had done was I had inserted a column here and I said Swachh Bharat tax and I said equal to 0.2% multiplied by amount. I clicked on amount and I pressed enter. And now when I try to copy ID and amount and paste it here, right, it gives errors here because Excel understands that there's something wrong going on. Inconsistent calculated formula, right? Restore to calculated column formulas. So Excel actually understands that something went wrong here, right? It understood that this tax column has been inserted in the middle of the data and it gave you an error so that you should be careful about this, right? That's why you actually did not get it at your end, Subhabrata. So this is great. So we're going to move ahead now and we're learning all of the benefits of inserting tables into Excel. And I'm going to move on to the next one, which is pane, right? So can everyone come to pane, the third one here. It's the third tab called pane. And if you think I made a spelling mistake on top of the screen, right? I did not make a spelling mistake, okay? So how many of you use a feature called freeze panes, right? Let me just ask everybody, how many of you use this feature called freeze pane, P-A-N-E? So say yes if you do. Yep, so Subhabrata, Hari, Nida, Manmeet, everyone uses freeze panes, right? So the whole point is, folks, that for those of you that don't know about this, right? So when we actually freeze a pane, like you see on the screen, Akash also uses freeze panes. Okay, so you actually freeze either a row or you freeze a column, and you do that because when you go down in your data, right, you don't even understand what's going on. So now look at this. Look at the screen now. Can you tell me what is this here? 0.7546875. You have no idea because you don't know what column H, the heading is. You don't know what row you're in. So you got to go all the way back up and then you realize, okay, this is surcharge, right? So this number over here was actually surcharge. So you actually freeze this pane over here, right? You go to view and you go to freeze panes like this and you freeze either the top row or the first column or whatever, right? Which is great. But here's another benefit of freezing the pane. So why do you actually freeze pane? And I'm going to call this PAIN, okay, because I think it's actually freezing the pane in life, right? So because when you reach here, right, you can see clearly that you've got the amount, tax, discount, and sales tax. And then above this, B, C, D, and E. Now, what happens after that is if I scroll down a little bit more, okay, and I'm going to do that now, you actually lose that information, okay? So you've lost the information and all you see here is B, you see C, you see D, you don't even understand what this was, right? And that's why you freeze a pane. Okay, so what if you were to insert a table in Excel? So again, all of this data, right, if I want to select it very quickly, okay, without actually using the mouse, I can do that right away by clicking anywhere on the data and saying Control A. The moment I say Control A, I'll select the entire table, and I can say Control T to insert a table. So there's a shortcut. Either I can go up to the top left and I can say Insert Table, or I can also say Control A and Control T, T for Tom, and I say OK. And the moment I do that, Excel inserts the table, okay, and I've got these nice colors that I can actually change. Maybe I prefer this color here. There you go. But that's not it. Now watch what happens, okay? So as you can see over here, there's amount, tax and discount again, and then there's B, C and D. Now watch what happens when I scroll down, okay? So I'm going to scroll down now and you'll notice something happens. Can someone tell me what's happening? Watch carefully and tell me what happens when I scroll down a little bit after inserting the table. There we go. Can anyone see what's happening on the screen? Okay, there you go. So Akash says headings are appearing automatically. Column names replaced by the header, says Rahul, and Ambuj, right? Column name gets changed, says Hari. So this is the really interesting thing, right? The moment you actually scroll down after inserting a table, once you've clicked in the table and you scroll down, Excel understands that you do not need to see B, C, and D anymore. What you need to see is amount, tax, and discount, right? So that's a really big benefit of inserting tables, is that it handles your entire freeze panes and you don't need to freeze the pane in your life, right? There's enough pain in our lives already, isn't it? So you do not need to freeze any pain in our lives, right? I hope you found this feature useful, okay? And I'm going to move on to the next feature, but before that, can I just get a quick show of hands, right? Does this help, folks? Is this useful? A chat box comment would also be good. Yep. Okay. All right. So Poonam Nida, everybody says fantastic, and we've got comments in the chat box as well from Manmi, Subhadra, Swami. But that's not it, right? There's more advantages, right? So inserting the tables, right? There's more advantages. So Nazia says yes as well. Okay, so I'm going to show you the other advantage of inserting a table. Now let me go back over here, right, towards the right of this table, and let me see if I can insert a column. Okay. Okay, so Nazia's got a question, right? Very nice question. How much data volume Excel can handle efficiently? Thanks for your question, Nazia. The answer is 97 million rows of data. So in Power Pivot, you can use millions and millions of rows of data on a 64-bit Excel, and it works perfectly. And we're going to teach you that in the next class when we use Power Pivot, which is a Microsoft BI tool, Nazia. Okay? All right, let me see if there's one more hand that's raised up. Thanks, Nazia, for your comment. Okay, I've actually unraised all of the hands. So I'd inserted a column here, folks. What I just did a short while ago is that I inserted a column, and I'm going to again come back to my favorite tax, which is the Swachh Bharat tax. I actually love this tax. I think it achieves a lot, right? I'm yet to see the results, okay? So on a lighter note, but I'm going to say here that this is equal to 0.2%, and let me just assume for a second that 0.2% of, or let's even say 0.02%, not even 0.2%, right? Let's say 0.02%. So just give me a second here. Okay, now I want to do 0.02% of amount. Okay, so what do I do now? Anyone can tell me? I actually don't know where amount is. Okay, so what do? I scroll. I use the scroll bar at the bottom and I scroll all the way to the left of my table and I click on amount. Okay, and then I go to the formula panel and I press enter. The moment I do that, luckily for me, since I've inserted a table, this formula gets copied to the entire table. But here's the thing, right? How many times are you going to scroll left and scroll right and scroll left and scroll right when you have millions of rows of data. It's definitely not going to be a very practical solution, even for thousands and thousands of rows of data, right? So what's a better way of doing this? Okay, does anyone know a better way of doing this? Anybody? Okay, so the whole point is you don't have, you have enough, pain in your life, right? So Swami's got the fantastic answer there. So Swami rightly says that you can use the square bracket. Thank you so much, Swami. So for everybody else, if you say equal to, and then the moment you open a square bracket, right? Watch what happens, okay? So watch what happens on my screen. The moment I open the square bracket, can you see what happens, everyone? Can everyone tell me what's happening here when I open the square bracket? What is it showing me? Can everyone see what's going on my screen, please? I'd love to have comments. Okay, so I've got a few comments here. It shows the column name says Ambuj, column header says Subhabrata, list of variables says Manmeet. Okay, right? So you guys notice that, right? The moment you open the square bracket, it shows you all of the headers in the table, and you can actually click on amount. So you double click on amount like this, you close it, and you say multiplied by 0.02% and you press enter. Right? And I did not have to go left, I did not have to go right. Using the square bracket, I was able to actually achieve, right, what I intended to do. And Nazia also says that it lists all of the variables of the table, right? So I want now everybody to practice the couple of things that we did just now. So what all did we do? We inserted the tables, and we actually saw that when we go up and down, when we are inside the table, when we click on the table, insert a table, and we go up, you're able to actually see the column headers right there. And then we also practiced using the square bracket at the end of the table by adding a column called Swachh Bharat Tax, and we said equal to, open the square bracket, and then we were able to multiply by 0.02% and calculate without scrolling left and right. So I'd like everyone to practice this and say yes in the chat box before we move ahead, please. Hey Hari, thanks a lot. So Hari was the one who actually guessed this. I'm sorry, Swami guessed this. So Hari's practiced this now. So Swami, I'm guessing uses this on a regular basis. So that's great. For everybody else, please practice. Okay, we'll take the next minute to practice. Yeah. The spirit of the Accelerator program is that you'll practice right here in the class, right? And you go back, you've actually learned something new today itself, right? Okay, so Nazia is done. Fantastic. We'll wait for everyone else to say they're done as well. Nazia, you might want to comment to everyone. So you might want to select all entire audience and say done. Akash, you might also want to say done to the entire audience by selecting all hyphen entire audience in the drop down in the Citrix GoToWebinar panel. Okay, so Nida's done, Rahul's done, Anish is done, Ankit is also done. Superb, Ankit, thank you so much. Right, fantastic folks. We're really beginning to understand what are the benefits of helping. So Sumit is also done, right? Okay. So we're beginning to understand the benefits of helping Excel understand where our table starts and ends. The moment we tell Excel, and I'm zooming out here, right? The moment we tell Excel, and this is my whole data here, where my table starts and ends, Excel starts doing a lot of magic for me. Okay. Okay, yeah, Akash, it's perfectly fine. I think you have some challenge there. I'll help you out next time. It's perfectly fine, Akash. Thank you. All right, so I'm now going to go to the next one, which is the FAR formula. But I want to leave you with a thought, right? That who is working for whom, okay? Now, here's the thought, and it might sound a little cocky here or a little sort of what shall I say, maybe a little bit on the funnier side, but really there's two people here in this universe, right? There's you and there's Excel, okay? And the whole idea is that Excel, should actually work for you and you should not work for Excel. So the whole idea is whenever you write macros or you try to do things which are tedious, right? You are actually working for Excel. Excel is not working for you. You need to get Excel to work for you, the human being, as opposed to you, the human being, working for Excel. And that's going to be the philosophy that we're going to live by today. Okay. So I'm going to close this and get back to my Excel sheet. Right. And let me erase all the drawings there on the board. Let's go to FAR formula. So there's a tab called, okay, so we've actually done FAR formula already. I'm sorry about that. So if you go to the tab called FAR formula, there's the net tax, net amount. So net amount is basically equal to, if you double click on this cell, X5. So net amount is equal to, you open the square bracket, it's probably, you can say, the amount minus maybe the sales, right? Okay. So you open the square bracket again and you say amount minus the tax, okay? Right. So I know that there's sales tax and other things, but for simplicity's sake, this was the FAR formula, which is using the square bracket to your advantage. Okay. All right, great. So we're now going to go to the next one, which is called risk. So you're going to see this at the bottom of your Excel sheet in a tab called risk. Okay. And I want everybody to open up that particular tab called risk. And here we go. It should look a little bit like this. Yeah. Right. So before we start, I want to ask people, can Excel sheets cause risk to an organization? Okay. So it's a simple question. And I put the question out there. Can Excel sheets cause risk to an organization? So Hari says yes. Okay. How about others? I need everybody to poll. Come on. Yes, no. Okay, everyone seems to agree that Excel sheets can cause risk, right? Nazia also agrees. Okay. Okay, Ambuj is not completely sure. Okay, thank you, Ambuj. I like the honesty. Really appreciate the honesty there. Swami says yes, and Subhadra says especially macro-enabled Excel sheets, right? Sumit says I don't know it right now, and Ankit says yes. Okay, so we're going to take a small segue, right? And what I'm going to do is open up Google for you. Okay, and all of you can open up Google at your end, your favorite search engine, and you type here spreadsheet horror stories. Okay, spreadsheet horror stories, and you type enter. The moment you Google for spreadsheet horror stories, you'll find a link called EU Sprig Horror Stories, which is the European Spreadsheet Risks Interest Group. Okay, and this is really fascinating. Okay, I'm actually going to take this link and I'm going to paste it for all of you to view in your webinar. There we go. I've just sent you the link. All of you can click this link and open this link and see what happens here, right? Spreadsheet mistakes and the losses that have happened in organizations because of spreadsheet mistakes. Just focus a little bit on the names of the companies here. So we've got JP Morgan. Okay, a lot of you know JP Morgan. The logic was not reviewed and there was a manual cut copy paste operation of the formula which resulted in a Basel error, right? So you know the Basel framework in Europe, right? It's a financial regulatory framework, and JP Morgan ended up making this mistake. Okay, now I'm going to go down a little bit more. Let's see if we can go down and look at the enormity of the problem. The second one is actually the university called Harvard, and a lot of you know Harvard, don't you? It's one of the best universities in the world, University of Massachusetts, and there was a formula that omitted a cell in an average, and the peer did not review this formula, and this resulted in researchers embarrassed after the student finds an error in the published paper. All right, it's a published PhD paper and there's an error in this. Okay, and the formula was the average of L30 to L44. Check it out here, right? So much for Harvard and JP Morgan. Well, let's go down a little bit more. Okay, let's see who else has actually suffered. AstraZeneca. Okay, this is getting very serious, folks, right? So the company's shares went down by 0.4% because of an error in an Excel sheet, right? Big issue, big challenge there. And you go down a little bit more and you realize the pain that people have faced, right? Data entry error, manual data entry in the Olympics. Go down a little bit more, $400,000 loss of interest calculation on account of what? A bad formula. So if you're wondering why I'm actually showing you the best and the most scientific way that Microsoft wants you to, make formulas work over an Excel sheet, this is the reason why. Okay. And this page, when you go down, it's full of horror stories, right? So look at this one here. False examination results. My God, right? Check this out. False examination results, bad formula, right? And this one is one of the most serious ones. So we'll go down a little bit more and you'll realize over here, $6 million lost. Okay. Bad spreadsheet link, $6 million, $12,500 worth of audit fees. Okay. So you're beginning to now realize why I'm stressing so much, folks, that we need to make sure we use Excel in the right way. Okay. So I'm going to go back now and come back to the Excel sheet over here. Excel or any spreadsheet can be a huge operational risk in the business, right? And how do you actually eliminate that risk? First of all, how do you even begin to identify that risk? Okay. So let's take a very simple example. Again, I'll use some very simple examples, but once you get a hang of the concept, you can apply it to much, much bigger data sets. Okay. So over here, you see an organization that, for example, has revenue in the months of January, February, March, and April, and all of it is $10 million. Okay. So the average revenue across all the 4 months, January, February, March, and April, since all of them are $10 million, the average is also $10 million. And it makes sense. The formula is average of D8 to D11, and which works out to $10 million, which is perfect. And then you've got the YTD revenue. So in case you're wondering what is YTD, it's year till date, which means from the 1st of January to till today. Okay. Now the YTD revenue is always calculated as the beginning of the year till that particular date. And in this case, assuming that we are on the 31st of April, the YTD revenue is $40 million. So which is the sum of D8 to D11, which is great. And then the January, February, March total, which is a nice way of saying the Q1 total, I could also probably just call this the Q1 total, is actually $30 million because it's got, 10, 10, 10 total, which is $30 million. Okay. But you notice here that there's a small error that appears when I click on 30. And when you click on 30 in your Excel sheet, a small error box appears over here. Can everyone see that error? Can everyone tell me if you can see the error, please? Okay, I'm just going to wait for the comments in the chat box, right? So I'm going to zoom into my screen here now. Can everyone see the small error appear over here? It's a green error box, okay? Right. So everyone's actually seen the error, right? All of you have seen the error appear, okay? So why has this error appeared, okay? So okay, so Poonam's raised her hand. Yeah, perfectly fine. So why has this error appeared? The reason this error has appeared is I actually put April data, and the moment I added April, data for April, Excel thought there was a problem because this formula was only adding January, February, and March. So if you click on the formula, it says sum of D8 to D10, but it does not actually include D11. So Excel gives you an error. Now, what do you mostly do when you see an error like this in your life? Okay. Now let's be honest here. This is the time to be honest. What do you do typically when you see these errors in an Excel sheet, right? So I've got a comment here. You ignore it, right? Nazia says, yeah, I mean, who cares, right? You ignore the error, and everyone's saying the same thing. You ignore the error. Well, some of us click on the error, so let's go back. That's perfectly fine. Thanks, Nida and Subhadra. But a lot of us actually ignore the error, and Ambud says save and close. That's hilarious. Okay. So when you actually click on this error, right, this small error box, and you click on the drop down there, and I'm going to zoom in here to make this very, very visible to you, right? So let me actually do this like this, okay? There you go. And I hope everybody can see it. So when I click on this, it says this formula omits the adjacent cells. So right next to March, there was an adjacent cell that had the revenue for April, and this formula omitted the revenue in April. So it gives me some options. It says I can either update this formula to include the revenue for April, I can include that cell, or I can ignore this error. Now, when I look at this particular formula, right, it says January, February, March. Okay. And do I need to include April in January, February, March? No, I don't, right? So instead of updating this formula, I can actually ignore this error once. Okay, there you go. So I've ignored this error and I'm a happy man. I go back and my problem is solved. So Nazia says ignore the error, which is perfectly fine. Now what I do is I actually get fresh data for the month of May, and as it turns out, we did fantastic in May. We actually got $20 million worth of revenue. It was superb. It was a great month. And I go back up and whoops, now there's a couple of extra errors, right? Average revenue seems to have got botched up, and also the year till date revenue seems to have got botched up. There seems to be errors here. So what do I do now? Do I ignore this error or do I update this formula to include the cells? So do I ignore or do I update this average formula? Come on folks, let's get your responses. Alright, so everybody is right. Everybody says we do need to update this formula because it's the average, right? So I update this formula and I update this formula again over here. Okay. Alright, so now I'm a happy man. Okay, problems are solved until I get the revenue for the month of June. Okay. Now, June was a superb month. It actually just completely went, way beyond our expectations. And over here, as you can see, again, I've got an error. So how many times am I going to keep fixing these errors in the formula? So what do I do, folks? Can you help me? Can someone help me? What do I do? How do I make sure I don't have to continuously update, these formulas, right? There you go. So Hari's got the right answer. So, Hari says insert a table. Nazia says insert a table, right? So I click on this and I say Control A and I go ahead and I insert my table, right? And the moment I do that, if I just ignore these errors once, right? If I say update this formula to include the cells once, now once I've inserted my table, hopefully we should not have the same problem. And if I insert a fresh month of revenue, July 40, I do not get that error anymore. Okay. So inserting tables clearly helps you eliminate these errors and these formulas that get updated automatically, right? Okay, so looks like we had a great time. Now let's go down. Let's just quickly have a look at this Excel sheet and whoops. All right, as it turns out, someone actually entered another formula in the same Excel sheet. So if you scroll down, someone walked up when you close this Excel sheet and Ambuj, said that you save and close the Excel sheet and you go. Well, Ambuj, guess what happened? Someone else went and opened this Excel sheet. So as it so happened, they entered a standard deviation formula and it shows that the standard deviation for the revenue is 0. But holy cow, there's a lot of deviation here, right? These values are deviating from each other. It shows 0 because it's showing you the deviation for January to April, but does not include May, June and July. Okay. So what do? You go here and you say, oh, that's fine. I'll update this to include the cells, and that solves your problem. Okay. And now let me add one more. Let me add the revenue for August. Let's say that August wasn't all that great a month. It was kind of okay, right? So I say $35 million and I go down and I check and I say, oh great. So standard deviation has got fixed completely. So I'm a happy man, right? I'm not going to be a victim of all of these horrible errors that happened in all of these organizations, starting from the government to all of these people, right? $1 million went missing when the staff managed monstrous spreadsheets. Okay. So a lot of you are thinking, why even do all of this in Excel? You can actually automate, but the reality is that you can't automate everything. Sometimes softwares take 2 years to get made in organizations and you need to work on spreadsheets. So you'd better know the right way of doing it. So can someone tell me, I found a standard deviation formula in this sheet and I fixed that, but when you have bigger Excel sheets, how are you going to find out what are all of the formulas in that Excel sheet? How are you actually going to check it out. So right here, if I do a visual inspection, oops, as it turns out, there are some more formulas in this Excel sheet. So we've got a problem, folks, right? I actually didn't notice that there were formulas in T5, V8, S14. Now this is getting really hard, okay? So Nazia's got the point, right? She says go to formulas and show formulas, right? So right on top of your screen you see insert, page layout and formulas, right? So over here you see formulas right on top of your screen, okay? And if you click on that, right, and I'm sure that some of you have used this feature, but now let's do it. You click on formulas, you'll actually find an option called error checking over here. So one is show formulas, which Nazia just spoke of, but there's also an error checking over here, right? So you can use show formulas, you can use error checking to your advantage. And now let me go to error checking and say error checking. I'll click on error checking. Okay, and it says there is an error in cell number T5. Do you want to update this formula? And I noticed that this is a sum of D8 to D11. So I think it needs to be updated because it was the total of January, February, March and April. D8 was January and D11 was April. So I say update this formula. And then it does the same thing for the other formulas. And I realize that all of them are summation formulas. So I say update all of these formulas. Now the moment I do that, it says the error check is complete for this entire sheet. Now it looks like I'm at a good place. I actually have a clean Excel sheet and I can actually add the revenue for September. And let's say September was absolutely the best month ever, right? So now the revenue, YTD and JFM totals are all perfect. My standard deviations looking good as well. And as it turns out, all of the other formulas that needed to be updated have also got updated. Life is beginning to look a lot better. It looks like I can go home on time today. Okay. So how do you actually reduce operational risk when you work in Excel? This is the way you do it, right? You use formulas and you use error checking to make sure that you've actually resolved all of the errors in your Excel sheet. Okay, great. So I hope this was useful to a lot of you, but there's one more piece of information that I need to talk about now, right? Which is that when you look at this data, right, C and D, column C and D, and you go down, you notice that the formula is also in this particular column. It's actually in column C and D. So what challenge do you have here? Can someone tell me what challenge do I have here? What's going to go wrong in a very short while? Let's get the responses from everybody. What could go wrong, if I've got formulas in the same column as the data? Right. So Hari says, thanks Nida. Hari says that it can be overwritten, right? And he's absolutely right, right? So over a period of time, when you actually copy all of this and you keep pasting it, over a period of time, you're going to reach a point where you actually are going to overwrite this particular formula, right? So if you look at it, right, very quickly you'll reach a place where the entire formula is going to get overwritten, and it's already happened. See, the formula has been overwritten already. So this is another reason for millions of dollars being lost in organizations, is when you actually do not realize that your data is going to collide with your formula. So what's the right way of doing this? Okay. So the important thing is when you've got a formula like this, right, standard deviation, instead of putting it, in the middle of the path where the data is going to come, you might actually want to put it on the right hand side of the table. So maybe over here on top, but even better than on top of the table is put it on the right hand side of the table, like over here, right? So, and then use your formula, standard deviation, and you can go ahead and apply your formula, right? And that's a much better way of doing things, right, than otherwise, okay? All right, so even these formulas here, right, the best way that you might want to actually keep these formulas is to keep these formulas over here and not right on top of the table. Ultimately, you want tables and you want data to be in the middle. The formula should be in the middle of the table. So if you've got a table here, and let's say, for example, you've got another table over here and another table over here, you want your formulas to appear in the middle of the tables, which is in this safe zone over here, right? You don't want the formulas to appear in areas where they can actually collide with your data, which is vertically. Vertically is where the collisions really happen a lot. So you've got to watch out for those collisions. I know sometimes we actually maintain data horizontally as well. Now that's not a very good practice in Excel at all, but it does happen. So I'm going to say you might need to watch out for that as well. Okay. At this point, I'm going to ask you a question, what is good data, right? And it's a simple question, and it's got a very, very simple answer in Excel, okay? So when you look at data, what is good data, okay? So can someone describe good data? What is good data, and when you get bad data, how do you know it's bad data? So what's good data to you? I want to know your definition, guys. Don't be shy, guys and girls, right? Let's not be shy. I just want to know what's your definition of good data. Okay. I've got some very interesting answers, right? So Nida says that data that's arranged vertically is good data. Nazia says similar in formats across. Okay. Proper heading says Hari. Okay. Fantastic. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I think all of these are very good responses, right? No errors, says Subhadra, right? And you'll find that the headers should be proper, like Hari says. They should not have formulas in the headers, right? That's a really bad idea. So sometimes you have headers that actually have formulas inside the header, right? And that can actually be a big, big challenge, right? The other thing is data should grow vertically. They should be in a consistent format. The simplest way is that if you can insert a table in Excel, then the data is probably good data. If you're able to select the data and say Control T and insert a table, that's good data. All right, fantastic. So let's close this file now, folks, exercise 1A, and let's open up exercise 1B. But before that, do you guys want to practice what I just did right now on the formulas? So let me go Control Z, and I'll tell you what you actually might want to just practice, right? So you might want to practice the formulas error checking option, right? And could you all do that now? Just practice on this Excel sheet for the next 1 or 2 minutes, and then we are going to move ahead to our next Excel sheet, which is exercise 1B. Hi Nida, did you have a question?
Sorry, it was a mistake.
No, that's perfectly fine. Thank you. So once you practice, please say yes in the chat box, and please don't be shy. If you want me to show you something again, just let me know and I will show you that again. Okay? And don't worry, there's a recording, folks. So if you're not able to practice right now, there's always a recording, but I would prefer that you practice some of this in the class, right? That's the whole idea of doing the accelerator is to actually practice in the class. Okay? Okay, so I've got some chat comments, right? Astha is having a hard time looking at the chat box. Okay, Anish says done, done, Subhadra done. So Astha, you might want to just see if you can click on the panel. I'm going to say hi now. You should see something flashing on the panel, Astha. And that's actually the chat box, right? So could you try and click on the GoToWebinar panel and see if you can see my comment. I'm actually saying hello, Astha. Okay, so just click around a little bit, Astha, and you should be able to see it. Okay. Right. So Hari, I think, had a question on what's the shortcut for error checking. So I actually go through all the panel myself, Hari. I don't use a shortcut. I just prefer to go through this panel myself directly, right? Okay. All right, folks. So I'm actually going to close this particular Excel sheet and move on to exercise 1B. Okay. So let me close this over here and see if I can now open exercise 1B. So there we go. And all of you can open up 1B at your end. Okay. All right. So we're going to consolidate a lot of information now, and this can take a lot of time in organizations, right? You get information that you need to consolidate, you need to clean it. And we've got one such piece of data right here in front of us. So this is the expenses that have occurred in an organization. And if you look at these expenses, right, it's January to August over here, and appliances and food, right? If you go to the expense data for 2014, the second tab, you find that it's January to December, but there's some months missing in between, and then it's appliances to comics. So there's an additional one called comics, which is a very small number, really small expenses here, right? On comics, this is US dollars, okay? And then if you go to expense data 2015, as it turns out, there's January to September this time, and it's appliances till comics. Okay, it's all fine, but as you notice, data is in different places in all of these Excel sheets. I mean, it's January to December in one case, it's January to August in another case, and how you actually going to compile this information, right? It doesn't look like it's going to be easy to put this together. So if I need to compile this into the expenses that have happened over the last 3 years and analyze that and look at the different months in which expenses went up or down, and I want to do what is basically some simple descriptive analytics around it. So how am I going to compile this information, because it's kind of inconsistent, right? It isn't a consistent information. So how am I going to compile this? Anyone has any ideas for me? How are you going to compile this information and make it consolidated 3 years worth of data, and actually get to then do a little bit of graphs or analytics, right? So one idea that I've got is from Nazia. Nazia says that we could try and VLOOK up the months, right? And we could try and VLOOK up the categories. Now the problem is that sometimes, Nazia, you probably noticed that people spend months in different ways, right? Someone will say June, J-U-N-E, and someone will say J-U-N, right? They will not actually say J-U-N-E. And people make spelling mistakes in travel reimbursement, right? That also tends to happen a lot, right? So how could I possibly do this in a better way? Is there any other way of doing this? Okay. Right, so Ambuj says consolidated pivot, offset function, says Hari. I've already shown it, says Ambuj. So now I want everyone to practice this, okay? The whole idea is now you should be able to practice this right here, okay? So you will find that there's some of the features of Excel which have been carried onwards from older versions of Excel into the newer versions of Excel, and one of them is actually, the data and pivot wizard. So if you use Alt D, right, and I'm going to actually put this up on the screen. Let me see if I can write it up for you. So if you say Alt D, and then once you say that, you actually then click on P, right, Alt DP, and you'll find that you'll be able to actually come to a screen. So let me show you that now as we speak. So I'm just going to zoom out a little bit into this data. I'm going to zoom out of this data a little bit here as well, and zoom out of this particular data a little bit here as well. So what I'm going to do is Alt D, and you'll see a small Office access key opens up on the top of the screen. Okay. So let me show you that. I'm going to just click Alt D, and right on top you see Office Access. Continue typing the menu key sequence from an earlier version of Office, or press Escape to cancel. So as it turns out, you need to press P Okay, P for Pat, and it'll open up this screen here. So it's Alt D plus P, and I click on multiple consolidation ranges, the third option. So the funny thing is you might have seen the pivot table and pivot chart wizard in your career, but you might not have wondered what the multiple consolidation ranges is about, right? So I click on that and I click on the next button, and now I say create a single page field for me, and I click on the next button, and then it says where is your data range. So I click on this little red button that you see here in the box, okay, and I select my data, entire data, including this empty cell over here, right? I select that, I click on the little button again, and I say add, and it adds this range of data to my consolidation process. Now I click on the little red button again and go to the second tab, expense data 2014, and select that entire data. Right click on the little guy and click add. Okay, and then I click on the little guy again, I go back to Excel 2015 expense data, and I click on the little guy and I say add. Now I've actually added all three of these, and I say next. It says where do you want to put the pivot table report? Do you want to put it into a new worksheet or an existing worksheet? So I say new worksheet and I say finish. And the moment I do that, I'm able to compile this entire data in a matter of seconds. So I was really slow right now, but if you go faster, you'll be able to compile this in around 45 seconds. And trust you me, I have seen people do this, sometimes in 1 hour, but this is really the least, okay? I've seen people spend 2 days compiling information like this, right? It's really bad because they've got huge cross tabs of data and a lot of spelling mistakes in the months. They have different spellings for reimbursement, right? All kinds of issues, right? And they take a lot of time, compiling this information. And like I said, there is you and then there is Excel. And my hope is that Excel is going to work for you and you're not going to end up working for Excel. Okay. So I want everybody to practice this right now. All right. So if you want to show, if you want me to show you again, I could do that. It's Alt D. When you press Alt D, you will get this little box on top, and you press P for Pat. And then you click on multiple consolidation ranges and say next. Select your data, including this cell over here, the empty cell. You select the entire table. Okay. So I want everyone to practice. Okay, so Nida's having a challenge at her end. So Nida, I'll have to probably, you can try a little bit later to see if it's working. Can you first try Alt D, Nida, and see if Alt D is working? Oh, okay, you have a MacBook, right? So that does not have compatibility. Okay, yeah. So now that's a big challenge, folks. I mean, it's a hard thing to say, but I've noticed this a lot, right? And I'm going to talk about this a little bit here. That when you look at the entire Mac Excel, right, you find that the Microsoft people do not have a lot of the functionalities into the Mac version. Okay. Now, very recently, Microsoft just launched a new version called Office 2016 for Mac, and in that you should hopefully have all of these things working. But a lot of the times you find that there are things that are specific to the Windows that actually do not work, on a Mac, right? So for those things, sometimes you have to actually use an older version of Excel. Okay. Okay, so Nida, it can happen sometimes on a Mac, so don't worry about it. You can try on a different computer, like a Windows computer. Okay, so Astha asked the question, how is Feb or February not affected in this case? And Nida says, okay. So Astha, I'll demo that to you right now very shortly. First, I want everybody to actually compile this information into one table right now. So I'll show you once more. Okay, so it's all D and P, and you say multiple consolidation ranges, you say next, and you say create single page field. You click on the little red guy and select your data, add it, click on the little red guy again, select your data, and you add it. And again, the third time, since you've got three sheets, you actually select your data and you add your data, right? Okay, and you say next, and you finish it, right? There you go. So I hope everybody has had a chance to practice this. Okay, I'm just going to wait for everyone to practice this. Is it necessary to have the same number of variables in both the rows and columns in all the data ranges? No, it is not. It is not necessary. You don't even have to have the same spellings. There could be spelling mistakes. Okay. Okay. So Hari has practiced this. I'll wait for others to try it at your end before I move ahead. So Hari, have you used this feature before, or is this the first time you're using this feature? Just out of curiosity. Astha is done as well. Thanks, Astha. Okay. Oh, Hari is using it for the first time. Okay. Anish is done. Manmeet is done. Sumit is done. Okay. Okay. Superb. Superb. All right, folks. So I got another interesting question, right? A very short while ago. That how does the spelling mistakes thing work, right? So I'll show you that in a very short period of time. But before that, let me see if I can, probably delete this entire thing and go back to where I was before. Okay. So this is where I was. So when you consolidate multiple ranges, let me make a small change, right? Let me make travel in the second sheet double L, okay? And now there's a double L in travel in the second sheet, single L in travel in the first sheet, and let's see what happens here, okay? And this happens all the time, right? You have spelling mistakes, people spell things differently. So let's see how we can actually take care of that, okay? There we go. So now you'll notice that there's actually two travels, right? So someone asked the question, how does this help? So when you see two travels over here, right? Everyone sees two travels, right? You can actually group it. So you can right click, you can select both of them and right click and just group it. And when you create a group, you can click on group one and there you go. You can actually name it travel, okay? And you press your enter button. So now what you do is you click on these little minus signs here, okay? There you go. I've clicked on all of these minus signs here and there you go. So I've been able to group all of these and I've been able to resolve that particular spelling mistake. Okay. Now the time has come to do some very quick descriptive analytics on this data. So I've got some expense data here. First thing I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to make a graph, okay, out of this, all of these expenses, okay. So let me just zoom in a little bit here and see if I can create a nice little graph around these expenses. Right, so just give me a sec here while I just clean up my data. I can actually select all of this, right, and just very quickly double click on any of them in between. There you go. So now let me try and make some graphs out of this, right? So I say insert a graph of some sort, maybe one of these charts, right? Okay. This is not making a huge amount of sense, right? Comics is way too low, salaries is way too high, and I'm not getting a meaningful graph here, right? When you look at these graphs, these are not very meaningful. And finance, if you work in finance, you face this problem all the time because, some numbers are very high on the y-axis, some numbers are very low on the y-axis. So if you, for example, look at over here, if you look at comics, right, it's a really small amount. And it works like this in business units. Some business units are making a very small revenue, some are making a very large revenue. So when you try to show it all together, it doesn't add up. So for this, you have a really nice feature in Excel 2010. This feature got introduced in Excel 2010. Okay, and I'm going to show you this feature right now. It's actually called sparklines. Okay, so let me put it here on the board. Have any of you used this feature called sparklines before? Okay, so I'm actually going to demo this feature now to you. It's really useful when you have different y-axes and you have variables that are very different on the different y-axis. So we'll do some descriptive analytics right away on this data. I'm going to click on column A. I'm going to right click and I'm going to insert another column here. I've got some nice space over here where I can actually do something interesting for you. So what I'll do is I'll select number 5 to number 10, A5 to A10, and I'll go up to insert right on top of the screen, and I'll go to this feature here called line. Okay, and it says line sparkline. Sparklines are mini charts that are placed in single cells, each representing a row of data in your selection. Okay, sounds interesting. So I'm going to click on this here, and the moment I do that, it says where's your data range, right? So I click on the little guy and I say, well, I want you to draw January appliances all the way till December travel. I want you to help me with a graph for all of this, and I say okay. Now the moment I do that, I actually get these little spark lines over here, right? And I go to the top and it says marker color, right? Now since this is expense, high expense is actually a bad thing, so I say red color, and low expense is a good thing in this case, so I say green color. The moment I do that, I have some very descriptive, charts that talk about my data. And now I don't really need to look at my numbers. So I can ask you some questions right away, and you'll be able to answer right away even without looking at the numbers. So I hope all of you can see my screen. Let me ask some questions now. So travel is the highest in which quarter? When you look at all 3 years, salaries is highest. Let's go for salaries, right? Salaries is the highest in which quarter? When you look at the spark line, it tells you the high point. Which quarter does that look like, right? So everyone says, March, or probably, the first quarter of the year, right? Okay. And if I were to ask you, Hari says first quarter, and reimbursements is the highest in which quarter, right? Okay, Nazia says Q1. So what about reimbursements? Reimbursement peaks in which quarter? Right? And everyone says Q4. So it's pretty apparent here that in this organization, it looks like finance requests people to submit their bill somewhere in Q4. So it looks like their year ends in 2000 in the month of December, which is why all the reimbursements happen somewhere towards October. It also looks like they actually give out their salaries somewhere in the month of March, maybe 31st of March. So it looks like their salary increment cycle is between April to March, 31st of March, 1st April to 31st March. And there's a lot of appliance expenditure in the middle of the year, and people seem to be buying a lot of comics somewhere in the end of the second quarter or beginning of the third quarter. So these spark lines, these little spark lines are beginning to actually demo this for you, right? Now the interesting piece is that you can actually drag the spark line. So I'm going to come here, I'm going to click on the spark line, and I'm going to drag it down, all right? And there you go. Now it tells you your grand total expenditure, and can anyone tell me it's highest in which month? In which quarter of the year is the grand total expenditure the highest? First quarter, second quarter, third quarter? Right, so everyone says the first quarter of the year, right? So we're beginning to actually move from just having some raw data here to getting to a point where we can do some very basic descriptive analytics, around this particular data, right? So this is spark lines. So before I move ahead, I want all of you to draw your spark lines from A5 to A10. So you select A5 to A10, you go to insert, you go to spark line over here, and you draw your spark lines. And you also put the markers high red color and low green color. So can everyone please practice and then say done once you're done, and we will move ahead after that. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to repeat now. So thanks Poonam, thanks Subhabrata and Hari. I'm going to repeat this for you again. So I select A5 to A10, okay? And then I go to insert, I go to line sparkline, I click on that, it says data range. So I click on the little guy, I select from January appliances all the way till December travel, which is from C5 to L10, and I click on the little guy again and I say OK. But now I don't go anywhere else. Right on top of my screen I can see marker color. Okay, so I click on marker color and I say high point red because it's an expense and low point green. Okay, and now I get my sparkline. Okay, I hope that helped Hari, Poonam and Subhadra. And I'm going to zoom in and show you the little guys that we've got here, right? And I'm going to drag the last spark line down and it makes a perfect spark line for the grand total. So Subhadra, again, right now the options that you have are only for the high and low points, right? Okay, so Sparklines is available in 2010 and above, that is correct. Sparklines are not available in 2007. So here's the thing folks, right? I see a lot of organizations out there and it never ceases to surprise me, right? They're using 2007 and I often wonder to myself what's going on because 2007 does not have Sparklines, okay? 2007 does not have flash fill, right? 2007 does not have Power Pivot, it does not have Power Maps, it basically doesn't have a whole lot of things, and I think all of us have to request the IT department. So what you'll realize is in your company there's probably an IT department, right? And they've kind of got something installed on your computer. So they've probably got something installed on your laptop, maybe 2007, or they've got a 2010. But the surprising thing is that when you ask the IT department, right, you'll find that your company would have procured some licenses of 2013, the Microsoft guys would have sold it to them, and 2016. And you've got to sort of raise a ticket, right, and request for that to be installed on your computer, and you'll find that you will get 2013 and 2016. If you don't, right, you can at least use Power Pivot in 2010 and Sparklines, right? So it's better than having 2007. So that's just something that I wanted to share with everybody over here, right? Okay, so Poonam is done as well. Okay, folks, great. So now what we're going to do is we're going to understand a little bit more if we can do some analytics on descriptive side on this data. Suppose I want to know January expenditure as a percentage of the total expenditure in January, right? So 1035 as a percentage of 6157. So I say equal to, and I say 1035 divided by 6157, and I've got 16%, right, is the approximate expenditure. And then I do this for all of the different months and I create a separate table over here. So over here I say 243 divided by 6157, and it's actually just 3.9%. And I've seen people apply these formulas and create an entire percentage down here, okay? But the whole point is who is working for whom. So let's go back to my premise. My premise is that you have purchased MS Excel and MS Excel has not purchased you, right? So you don't want to sort of work in a way that is not efficient. There must be a better way of doing this. If I want to see January as a percentage of 6157, what is the way in which I can do this? Can anyone help me here, right? So what I want is basically I want January as a percentage of the total grand total, right? How do I actually display this on the screen? I also want to see March appliances as a percentage of March total. Basically, I want to see all of these expenses here as a percentage of the total for that particular month to figure out, what's going on in which month. Come on, someone is going to tell me the answer. I know. Okay, so percentage column totals. Okay, says Manmeet, right? So sum change it to percentage, right? Okay, so we've got a couple of interesting responses after right click. Okay, thank you, Manmeet. So here you go. So folks, try this out. So if you right click, if you click on 1035 and you right click, you go to show values as, okay? Show values as. So I right click, I click on 1035, I right click, I say show values as, and it says percentage of column total. So mostly if you're trying to do something locally in an Excel sheet, you should right click and try to look for it. If you're trying to do something globally, then you need to go up to the panel and look for it in the panel. Okay. So over here, I'm trying to do something locally in this sheet and I say show values as percentage of column total, and it gives me these percentages. Now note that the sparkline just changed. So sparklines do not work for percentages. Sparklines work better for absolute values. Okay. So over here, when I've got percentages and I want to look at this as a heat map or as a visual, right? So what I'm going to do is I can use conditional formatting. So over here on top, you see conditional formatting. It says easily spot trends and patterns in your data using bars, colors, and icons to visually highlight the important values, right? So I click on this, it sounds interesting, and I go to data bars and I click on solid fill maybe, right? Or maybe this one here. I like this color. So this is not so interesting then, but there's this little guy here, right? There's a small button. So I click on that there and it says all cells showing sum of value values. And I click on that. And the moment I do that, I actually get this nice view where I can look at the data visually, right? And so January as a percentage of the total in January, appliances is 16.81. It's a small bar, but it's easy to note that in the month of January, appliances is a smaller bar than the bar for travel, which is a bigger bar. So clearly in January across all the years, if I were to ask you which expense category was the highest expense category in January across all 3 years, 2013, 14 and 15 in this data, what would your answer be? Which expense category out of all of these expense categories was the highest? And I've got some answers flowing in, so let me just quickly go there. And Hari says travel, right? So everybody can see this, right? So it's travel, isn't it? It's the biggest bar is for travel. It's over here. It's a bigger bar than the others. So let me ask you the same question. In the month of May, which category is the highest expense category? Come on, everybody needs to answer now. In the month of May, just looking at the data, don't look at the numbers, okay? Just looking at the graph, right? It's clearly appliances, isn't it? And so if I would ask you a different question, that reimbursement peaks in which months of the year, okay? Reimbursement, which is over here, peaks in which months of the year, right? And it's really easy because we are actually using surface charting. So you can see over here, it's all July to December, isn't it? So everyone says December, it peaks in December, and all of these months seem to be really high, right? July to December. So what's happening now is, folks, what we're doing right now is called surface charting, okay? And I'm just going to write this out on the board. So the idea is to do some amount of descriptive analytics right here on the surface of the data. You don't have to do it somewhere else and put it into a PowerPoint, right? You can do your descriptive analytics right here on the surface of your data, right? And that is known as surface charting, okay? So this is actually a way of doing some amount of descriptive analytics, quick and dirty on Excel, and you can actually do surface charting, right? And this is very, very useful, especially when the y-axis varies a lot. You'll find that sparklines are very useful, where expenditure or profit or revenue can vary significantly on y-axis, or any variable varies significantly on the y-axis. Okay, but now I want to ask you a different question, right? There's some data that we were not able to compile. So we were able to compile months, expense categories, we were able to compile the actual amounts, but there's some data at the bottom of the table that we were not able to compile into our table. What data did we completely miss? What variable have we completely missed? Okay, so I've got some answers flowing in, and fantastic answer from Hari. He says year, right? And this is a big mistake, right? What happens sometimes is, I want to just round of applause for Hari there. Fantastic answer. So what tends to happen, folks, is we put data in these tab names, right? Like the year. This should not have been the case. Also, this is not the best way to store data in a cross-tab format, right? This is known as cross-tab data. This is actually not great data. Because one of you said a short while ago, data that grows vertically downwards is actually good data because you can actually insert a table and you can do any kind of reports that you want. But data that grows like this diagonally, okay, in this fashion, right? If I have to add more months or more categories, the data will grow diagonally. This is not great data. This is not the way you want to store your data. So the question is, how should this data have been stored in the first way? So it should have been stored tabularly like this. If you go to tabular tab, you'll see expense category, appliances, amount, currency is missing information as well, right? So everybody talked about the year, but you missed out on the fact that there's no currency mentioned here. That's also data. So this is where things go wrong, okay? You actually have missing data. So you add currency as well, and it's Indian rupees, for example, and you add the month and the year, and then you have the data in the format in which you can actually insert a table, right? And you can actually do some cool work on this. Formulas don't belong here because they're going to collide with your table. So I'm going to delete this here and put the formula over here. This is the right place to have the formula, right? Okay, so this is how you actually want to store your data. Now you'll tell me, right, that Amit, this is tedious, right? How many times I need to make multiple entries, right? For example, appliances in Jan is, this is one entry, right? Each one of these cells is one entry. So total, I'd have to make 100 entries into this table. But if you make that effort once and store data in a tabular format, trust you me, you can do so much with it in Excel. It will defy your imagination. Okay. So we're going to close this now, right? Exercise 1B, and we're going to take a small break, right? So everyone deserves a break. And what we typically do, folks, in the accelerator is that we have a break around, 1 hour 30 minutes into the session. So we're about there right now. We're at around 1 hour 47 minutes. So we're going to take a break. And how many minutes do you want? So you guys can choose. Do you want 5 minutes? Will that work for everybody? Or would you like a little more, maybe 10 minutes? So you can choose, folks. I need a vote from everybody, 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Okay. 5 is good, says Asta, Subhadra. How about everybody else? Okay, so great. So we'll take 5 minutes, and if you are 1 minute above, 1 or 2 minutes more than 5 minutes, don't worry, okay? All right, see everybody back in 5 minutes. All right, so now I've opened up the Excel sheet called autofill and flash fill for all of us. Welcome back from the break, and I see that Astha, Subha, Prata, Ambuj and Sumit have the file open. How about everybody else? Can everyone please comment? So Nazia has it open. Okay, I just got the file open. Rahul, Hari, okay, everyone's got it open. All right, so fantastic, folks. So very quickly now, let's proceed here. So if you look at this, right, there's a lot of times in Excel that we actually end up populating data that Excel can populate for us, right? And this holds for a lot of tools, not just Excel. So I want to talk about some of these opportunities. And Akash has a quick question. So Akash, you can type out your question, please. I'd be more than happy to ask, or I've unmuted you, Akash, if you want to talk. Okay, so Akash, whenever you want to ask the question, please feel free to either type it or you can talk. I've unmuted you, but I can't seem to hear you right now for some reason. So you can type it out in the chat box, Akash. Okay, so while he gets back to us, right, I want to talk about autofill. And autofill is a really useful function in Excel. A lot of you already know this function, autofill, but you probably don't know that it's called autofill. Okay, you just do it intuitively, right? And we're going to talk about this function before we move on to the more complex function called flash fill, right? So autofill, when you look at it, right, if I look at this data that you see on my screen right now, and I actually drag these formulas out, and let's see what happens when I drag out these formulas, right? So when I drag down one, what's going to happen? When I drag down one all the way to the bottom, what's going to happen, right? Let's check it out. Well, it says one, right? What if I do 1 and 2 and I drag them both down together, right? Then what's going to happen? Then Excel starts to understand the numbers, right? So Excel understands the numbers 1 and 2 and understands the sequence that I actually wanted to follow. So often I find people, trying to create an Excel sheet. So let's take, for example, the attendance of a factory, and they want to create an Excel sheet that has dates, for example, 1, 2, 3, and they actually type this physically, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and little do they realize that they could just select all of this and use the autofill function, and it also shows them till where it's actually getting dragged, and they could drag it out for half of the month over here, and they could write the names of the employee over here, whatever be the names of these employees. So people don't realize that they can use autofill to their advantage. So I'm going to actually show you autofill right now. Now what happens when I drag Monday down? So you all know that when I drag 1 and 2 it goes to 14, but what will happen when I drag Monday? Any guesses? Any guesses on the chat box, folks? What's going to happen when I drag Monday? Come on. Yeah? Alright, so Ambud says Tuesday, right? It would be Monday, says Hari. Well, check it out, right? So when you drag Monday, you'll be surprised. Excel understands that most probably you wanted to fill it out and say Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Okay, so it's the day series, like Poonam says, right? And this is very useful, but not just that. If you drag MON, Excel understands that a lot of people want to write Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. If you start from Friday, Excel will go on from Saturday, Sunday onwards. If you drag a month called March, it will drag that down, full form or short form, right? So Excel understands these things, and this is something that you should use to your advantage, right? And if you drag out A, though, it doesn't understand what you mean by that. But if you drag out A1, it understands you want A2, A3, A4, and if you drag out B1, it will go for B2, B3, B4, and B5. And what happens when I drag Q1? Can someone tell me what will come in the next 4 cells? Q1, what's next? What are the next 4 cells? Okay, what's after Q1? Q2, right? Q3, and then after Q3, what comes after Q3? Anyone? Keep going, folks. Q4, what comes after Q4? Q5, alright, now let's stop there. Here's the interesting thing, right? If you drag Q1, right, you'll find that after Q4 it goes to Q1, and that's Ambuj has actually spotted that. So if you drag it down after Q4, Excel understands that 9 out of 10 you want to create a report that has quarters, and the next one is actually Q1. Even if you drag QTR1, it will go quarter wise. So quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4, right? Okay, and this is really useful because I find people create reports, in finance where you got like, okay, so this is QTR1 and this is QTR2 and this is QTR3 and then this is QTR4 and then they type this is QTR1. My point is, who is working for whom, right? Are you working for Excel or is Excel working for you? All you need to do is just type QTR1 and see if you can drag it down, and it will give you all of your quarters. And if you want, you could make different color codes, just to make life a little easier for the different years, though I don't always recommend it. It's very bad to store data as colors, okay? So I'm just going to mention that again so that we understand this concept really well, okay? And it's something that happens a lot in organizations is you actually store data, right, as a color. And this is a big mistake. You shouldn't store data as a color. It's okay to highlight things, right? That's perfectly fine if you actually, highlight things. But there's no reason that you should be storing data as a color. Okay. All right. So if we have more number of columns, then what do we have to do, says Sumit Panda. Okay, I haven't completely understood that question. So let me just quickly check with Sumit what he might have meant by that. Sumit, I'm going to unmute you for a quick second. Yes, Sumit, you said if we have more columns in the sense?
You said no, we have to drag, we only write QTR1, then we have to drag. So if we have thousands of columns, then what to do?
So thousands of columns, as in the second column, what would there be instead of QTR1?
No, sorry sir, if we have thousands of rows, sir.
Thousands of rows.
Means sir, now 1 to 18, so you have dragged it. But you have 1 to 1000, so what we have to do?
Right. So you would need to drag though, but there is a smart way of doing it. So that's a great question. So let me show you that right now. Thank you so much for that question. I'm going to mute you now. So what you can do is in autofill, right? There's a very nice option which I'm just going to show you guys right now. Okay. So suppose you want to stop somewhere, okay? For example, if you want to drag till a certain point, okay, you can put a marker at that point and it will stop dragging at that particular point. So if instead of 18, if I want to stop at 53, or if I want to stop dragging right here at number 7, what I can do is I can put a marker here at number 8, okay? So I'm going to demo that to you right now, right? So what you can do is if you drag this down without a marker, it will drag all the way down. Suppose I wanted to stop at a particular number, let's say at number 8. So I can put a marker here, I can just write P, okay? So P is going to stop Excel, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click here and boom, it goes all the way till P, but it stops at P, okay? So you can do this, you can put a speed breaker in the way and tell Excel till where you want it to actually drag this particular formula. So if I were to put the P over here in cell number H12 and I come here and I double click, it will go all the way till H12 and it will stop right there. Okay. So that's the way that you can go till a certain point in your Excel sheet, right, and use the autofill function by putting a roadblock. Okay. Any character is a roadblock. All right. So not only that, you can also do stuff like 5.75 if that's the interval, and the next interval is 6.00. So I'm going up in intervals of 0.25, right? Now, if I actually double click, you'll find that it goes all the way till 8.75 and it creates these intervals for me, right? Okay. So Asthapuri says, can I show once more? Okay, so I'll show you once more. I want everybody to practice on their Excel sheets. So over here I've got A1 and it's all blank here. Suppose I want up to November, I want this to be dragged, right? So what I do here is on December, I put a full stop. I put a P, any character like a P, right? And I go back to A1, I click on A1, I click on the corner of the cell and I double click there. The moment I double click, it will go all the way down till P, but it will stop at P, okay? So you put a roadblock along the way and it will actually use autofill till that point. So if I wanted to stop over here, I put a character here like a U and I come and double click on the corner and it goes all the way up to U, but it stops here, right? Okay. And the famous Keanu Reeves movie Matrix, well, if you drag that, it believes that there are many more editions of Matrix that are going to come out by Keanu Reeves. But as it turns out, Keanu Reeves is 50 years old now, so I don't know how many more we might get in the future. Okay, so can everyone practice flash fill, autofill? More specifically, can you also practice, to Sumit's question, can you try and use the marker and put the marker at any point and go and use it till that point, right? So you should put a marker over there and practice this. So can everyone practice the flash fill and then we'll go ahead after that, okay? Subhabrata is done. Hey Manmeet, you can try it out at your end, Control C and down arrow and see if it's working. I think it may or may not work, but give it a shot once, right, at your end and let us know if it's working. So Manmeet wants to ask if it works for the shortcut, right? So we'll just quickly see. Okay, so can everyone see my screen moving? Right, so I'm actually clicking on different places in my screen. I just want to make sure that everyone can see it. Okay, so Poonam is able to see it, Hari is able to see it, because Nazia seems to have some display hanged issue. Nida can see it, Subhabrata can see it. Okay, so Nazia, probably some small internet issue at your end. Let me unmute you and just speak to you for a second. Okay. Yeah, so Nadia, I've got you unmuted. Probably there's some issue at your end. Could you just see if it's working now?
Yeah, I mean, it's very slow. Right now it started moving a little bit, but earlier it was totally hanged. So I don't know. I
Okay.
mean, let me just refresh or maybe close or start.
Yeah, it can sometimes
Yeah.
it can be an internet issue, right? So
Yes.
Manmeet, could you try that at your end? Can you try that at your end, Manmeet, and tell me if it works for your control C and down arrow as well? That would be really nice, right? If you have a big data set, if it works, right? If you can put a marker and try. Okay. So I've got everyone unmuted and okay. All right, folks, so it can happen sometimes the screen can be a little slow due to the internet connectivity. And what I'm going to do now is move to the next important thing. And there's a quick tip that's come in from Nida. Nida says that, she faced a small issue with Citrix a short while ago. So what she did was she logged out and she logged back in, and then it worked a lot better. So probably, you guys can try that in case any of you face a challenge. I think Subhabrata also faced a similar issue and he just logged out and logged back in and he got the audio, right? Okay. Okay, so Nazia says it's fine now. Okay, great. So folks, I'm going to move to the next one, which is called pet shops. So this is really cool, right? You can all open up the pet shops tab. Okay. And there's a tab called pet shops. Can you say done once you've got the tab open? Right, so everyone's got the tab open. Okay, fantastic. All right, folks. So this is some real data that I pulled up, right? So I basically, I pulled out some data from Just Dial. And how many of you have heard of something called Just Dial? Could you say yes if you've heard of it? Right, so it's called Just Dial. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so some of you have heard of Just Dial, right? It's this feature where you can get information, and I actually went to Just Dial and I was looking for pets. Okay, so basically what I did was I went to Just Dial and I said pets Bangalore, right? And what I got was some results, and I've got those results over here on the screen. I just pulled out those results for myself, and I said, what can I do with this, right? So the interesting information here is, that when I looked at the information I got from Just Dial, I got an address that had everything bundled up into one cell. Okay. Now, from a data standpoint, this is a disaster, right? Because you've got multiple pieces of data inside one cell and you don't know how to pull them out. And if you've got millions of such cells, it can become really hard. So I've got the Glennon's Pet Store, DJ Pet Paradise, Tornado Pets, Heavy Petting, Juno Pets, Lovey Dovey, that looks like birds. True Pets, Growl Meow, and Mean Center, Bow Wow, and Reptile Lovers. Now, I don't know who would keep a reptile as a pet, but yeah, trust you me, there were reptiles as well. Okay. Now the piece is that, look, I've got a lot of information here, right? And I need to pull information out. Okay. And now you will actually see the power of Excel 2013, and I'm going to show you a function called flash fill. Okay, and this is one of the big reasons why you should actually have Excel 2013. It's for this function called flash fill. Okay, now, what is flash fill, right? The first thing is that flash fill is basically kind of like a pattern matching algorithm, right? And it's pattern matching inside Excel. So you can match patterns on the left-hand side. Anything that's on the left-hand side, if you write something on the right-hand side, it'll try to see if there's a pattern between these two things. And it's going to replicate that pattern for your entire column. Okay, so that's what flash fill does. It tries to figure out, hey, what's going on the left, what's going on the right, what's the connection between the two things, and if there is a connection, can I replicate that for the rest of the table? Okay, so I'm going to demo flash fill for you now, yeah, and watch as we do. Suppose you want the house number or the street number and you want to pull it out of this data. So let me try that now. Let me try to pull out the house number. So as you can see over here, Glennon's Pet Store is number 35 on Church Street in Bangalore. So I'm going to type out here NO dot and then 35. Okay, and I'm teaching Excel. Now this is really interesting, right? I'm teaching Excel what I want. What I'm saying to Excel is, look, over here I've got NO 35, and this is what I'm interested in is the door number or the house number. right? And I type it out once and I show Excel what I want. Now let's see if Excel can apply its intelligence for me, okay? So now we're getting serious here and we're saying that Excel possibly now has some form of intelligence, okay? And let's see if that is true or if that is false. We're going to test that hypothesis now, okay? So what I do is I click on this cell and there's the little guy that appears over here. I click on that, I keep it pressed and I drag this formula down to the bottom, right? Up to here and I leave it. The moment I leave it, I check whether Excel has been able to achieve the correct results. So can someone tell me, has Excel been able to achieve the correct results or not? Yes or no? Have a look at DJ Pet Paradise, right, and tell me whether Excel achieved the results, right? So actually, no, Excel has not achieved the results, right, because it's number 18 for DJ Pet Paradise and it actually says number 36. So it couldn't exactly understand what I wanted. But if you go to the bottom, there's this little guy here, right, that says autofill options. And when you click on this, right, it says flash fill. The fourth and the last option is flash fill. So when I click on flash fill, whoa, now has Excel been able to give me the right answer? Please have a look now and tell me, has Excel been able to figure out what I wanted from this data, right? You got it. So everybody now sees that Excel has applied a machine learning pattern matching algorithm and it has been able to actually pull out the house numbers for me. I did not have to code, I did not have to write a macro for this, right? But it gets even better, okay? This was fairly simple because, the very first number is the house number, but let's go with something a little more complicated, right? Let's do something that we always do in the corporate sector. We pull out the PIN code, right, and try to do geospatial analysis using the PIN code or visual analytics, on a 2D or a 3D map of India for sales using a PIN code. So let me try to pull out 560001, okay? And then over here, I'll type out 56. Oh, watch now. What's happening on the screen? The moment I typed out 56, it actually is suggesting something to me. It's saying, hey, do you by any chance want these pin codes? And Excel is showing you that very faint. It's very faint in color, but it's showing you all the pin codes. The moment you type 5 and 6, right? If you press the enter button right now, Excel will automatically populate this. You don't have to drag it. At that point, if you press the enter button. So I'll go Control Z, I'll show you again. So what I did was, I clicked here, I typed 560001, and then on the second one, I typed 56, and the moment I did that, Excel made a suggestion. It said, hey, by any chance, are you looking for pin codes? And I press the enter button and it populates the entire pin codes. There you go. Awesome, isn't it? So Subhabrata says, awesome, right? And let me just talk to you, right? So, hey, Subhabrata, so can you imagine the uses of this, right? I've got you unmuted now. Right, it's absolutely awesome, right? And imagine the uses of this function, right? I mean, everyone here. So Nazia is also saying it's great. Manmeet is saying it's great, right? All right, so I'm going to show you how useful flash fill is, folks. You'll be shocked, okay? You'll be shocked and surprised on how useful the flash fill function can actually be, okay? Right, so can everybody practice this right now before I move ahead? Yes, Subhabrata, I was able to hear you, but it was very faint. And can everyone practice this? So I'll talk to Astha for a quick second. She's probably got a question.
Yeah. Hi, Amit. I wanted to ask you, will this still work if the house numbers are like scattered, like if it's written after the street?
Yeah, it'll work, but you'll have to teach Excel more than once. You'll have to teach it twice and thrice. So it'll make some mistakes and then it will learn because it's a pattern matching algorithm. So let me give you an example, right? When you look at your screen right now, Astha, you notice that the pin code in column B4, pin code is in the middle of the text, right? But when you look at number 9 and number 10, pin code is towards the end of the text. It's not in the middle of the text, right? Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Right? Yet it was able to
Yeah.
figure it out. But having said that, that's a beautiful question because you can actually teach Excel in Flashfill, and I'll show you how it happens. It may make a mistake once, but when you teach it what you actually wanted, where it makes a mistake, it applies pattern matching and machine learning again, and then it corrects itself. Okay, so it's awesome. It's like
Okay.
a pattern matching machine learning algorithm inside Excel, and I've got some examples coming up if you want to just hang on there. Okay.
Okay. Sure. Thank you.
All right, superb. Great question. So, right, and then Swami says, what if H number is with a different special character like H number 18 slash, okay, so same thing, Swami, you have to teach Excel what you want. Even with more complex data sets, Excel can learn. So I will show you that in a very short while with one more data set, Swami. Okay. All right, so first of all, can you practice this? Can everybody please pull out the pin code? I just want you to pull out the pin code, right? And then say done once you're done. Once you're done, I'll tell you a really amusing story of what happened at a big corporate sector company in Orissa. Right, so Anish is done. Okay, so Nida, again, sorry to say folks, but Microsoft and Apple are not best friends. So Flashfill does not work in MacBook because Microsoft hasn't actually given the coolest things to Apple. So we're all stuck between the big war between Microsoft and Apple here, Nida. Okay, so let me just very quickly get Nida, unmuted. Hey Nida, you've got a MacBook, right?
Hi, yeah, most of the Excel files I cannot open them because of some security issues, and some of I'm not able to follow it because I don't get those options here.
Yeah, no worries.
That's okay. I will catch up later.
Okay, and hey, by the way, if some of you have a spouse or a friend who's got a Windows computer, so you might want to just take all of these Excel sheets and put them on the Windows computer and practice on that. Okay?
Yeah, sure, I'll do
Right.
that.
Right.
Thank you.
Super. Right. Thanks a lot. Yeah, I mean that does tend to happen. Hari, you are very right. Flash fill. Let me unmute Hari and I'll actually share something with Hari here. If I can just unmute Hari here. Yeah, so Hari, I've got you unmuted. And Hari, I had a student
Yeah,
who came back to me and thanked me for flash fill because they were able to make changes in dates in an Excel sheet that had 14 million rows using flash fill on the date and time. Okay, so it
okay.
absolutely works, right? So Nazia
My
wants
question was, there is an like on the first in Church Street is there. Can we pull out that data? There's a pattern there.
which data?
I mean, on the first line, number 35. There, after that, there is a comma. After that, there is an address before Bangalore. Can we pull that alone? I mean, like that, that's a pattern. Can we create?
Right, so we can try, you can try different things. Sometimes it works, some things it works, some things it does not. But for the date correction that you're talking about, it definitely works. I know that it works for dates.
Oh,
Okay. All right.
okay.
So quick thing here. Nazia wanted me to show flash fill once more. So I'll just do that once more for Nazia. I know she's got a slightly slow connection there. So Nazia, I hope you can see this here. So I'll type out the pin code 560001 and then there's two ways I can do it. I can drag this till the bottom, right? And I can then say over here, click on the little button here and say flash fill. So that's method number one, okay? The other way I could do it is that I could go to the second cell and explain to Excel what I want. I say 56, right? And see if Excel makes a suggestion to me. It actually does not, right? Let's go to the third cell and see if Excel, well, right now it's not making the suggestion because I actually already flash filled once, right? But if you have not flash filled once before, it will actually make the suggestion for you, right? So 560001, then you type 56 and there you go. So it makes the suggestion and I press the enter button, it will populate that for me. Just a second here. So Nazia, can you just practice at your end? I just want to make sure you have a chance to practice it before we move ahead. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So the moment I type 56 in the second cell, it gives me the auto suggestion. I press enter and it will populate the cell for me. Okay. Yes. So Swami asks an interesting question, right? Swami says, will it work only for tabular data? So Swami, the way it works is it looks at whatever is on the left hand side in the adjacent cells. Okay. And it tries to identify what you're trying to do. It tries to identify the pattern and then does it on the cells on the right. So it does require data that grows vertically downwards. And this is why I insist for everybody to create data that goes vertically downwards in a tabular format and not use cross tab data, okay, because this works in tabular format only. Having said that, if you insert a table, then Excel can look at the first column, second column, third column and try to pull out whatever you want. If you do not insert a table, Excel will only look at the column next to this particular cell. Okay, so another advantage of inserting tables is that Flashfill will look at all of the columns in your table and try to figure out what you're trying to do, identify the logic, and then work on it. Okay, so the interesting thing is, right, if you actually Google Flashfill, you'll find that it's a gentleman from India who wrote a PhD paper, right, and he actually is, I think, a Sindhi gentleman who wrote this for 4 years, okay, and then it got introduced into Microsoft, okay. So I should pull up that PDF for you, right? It's a really interesting white paper that he wrote and it went viral and then it went into Microsoft. So it took 4 years to write this particular algorithm, the flash fill algorithm. I'll pull it out for you a little later. So now I'll quickly show you some implementations of flash fill, okay? Here we go. Right, so now let's look at how flash fill helps you. Country and capital in one cell. I want just the country. So I say India, it doesn't understand what I want. I say Bangladesh and it now understands what I want, right? The moment I type B, it understands and I press enter and there you go. I've got all the countries pulled out, okay? Now, suppose I want the capitals pulled out, well, it understands that too. So I say Delhi, and the second one, when I type capital M, it gives me the suggestion and I press enter and it pulls out the capitals for me as well. Okay. Yeah. So Subhabrata's got a nice comment. It can be used to concatenate. I'm coming to that very shortly, Subhabrata. Can everybody practice this, please? Can you pull out the country and the capitals? Everybody needs to practice and say you're done. Okay, Subhabrata is done. How about others? Swami Hari done. Nazia, okay. I know some of you are on a Mac, so sorry about the Microsoft challenges, but Flashfill is the one reason, why you guys should see if you can upgrade to Excel 2016 for Mac. And you need the professional edition, okay, not the office and home edition. All right. So how about everybody else? Have you practiced this before I move ahead? Okay. Not just that, Flashfill can remove variable spaces as well. So go to the next tab called variable space removal, and as you can see, there's actually variable spaces here between the characters. So very often you get very messy, spaces, right, like this, okay? And your data is a total mess, and you want to actually remove these gaps here. You've got 5 characters here, you've got like 10 characters here, 15 characters, you've got 4 characters, and so look how Flashfill works. I'll type gaps in a sentence, okay? Just give me a sec here. Yep, gaps in a sentence. Okay, so I type that out and I've removed the spaces once for Excel, and I've said, look, this is the output that I want. So what am I doing? I'm basically saying to Excel that, hey, look, here's kind of like the input, right? And here's the output that I want. But since I'm a lazy boy, I don't want to write a macro in Excel. Okay, I'm not interested in writing macros. I've got analytics to do and I need to save time and can you help me save some time and do all of this just at one click? And Excel says, yes, I'm at your service and Excel can help you. So let's do that now. So I'm going to drag this down and I'm going to say flash fill. The moment I do that, boom, there you go, done. So variable space removal can also be done by flash fill in 1 second. Can everyone practice this, please? Variable space removal using flash fill. And just say done once you've typed it out. You just need to teach Excel what are you looking for. So all Excel is saying is that, master, I'm at your command and can you tell me what you want? Right? So it's basically the process of teaching Excel. So this is kind of a little new to us, right? We didn't ever think of ourselves as people who would, sort of teach Excel what we want, right? But you can now teach Excel what you want, provided your company has got you Excel 2013. Okay, so is this cool? Have you guys practiced this? Can I get some comments, please? Ambuj, Anish. Oh, okay, Ambuj got the MacBook issue, right? Okay. Yeah, so Hari's got a question, right? What if there's no spaces? So then the pattern may be a little hard to understand, right? So Hari's got an interesting question, right? So suppose we do not have gaps, okay? Will it be able to understand if there are no gaps whatsoever? Suppose I say Amit is here. So will Excel be able to understand what to do with this? Will it be able to insert spaces? I'd probably say not. Okay. The reason being that the whole challenge is that suppose I had this, suppose I were to say Amit is here. How does Excel know what the pattern is? Right? How does Excel know what the pattern is when I say Amit is here? I think it will not be able to understand. So let's try that now. Okay. So I drag this all the way to the bottom and I say flash fill. Okay. And Excel, what Excel understands is, and if you look at the thinking, right? Right. If you look at the thinking here, what Excel understands is wherever there are variable gaps, Excel understands that you wanted to reduce the multiple gaps to one character only, right? But in this case, there are no gaps. So Excel treats this as one text and cannot figure out where in this it should insert a space. It's actually, flash fill is just trying to look at this as the reduction of multiple spaces, whether it be 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 or 200 to one space. And that's the pattern that it identifies. So when is flash fill going to work and when is flash fill not going to work is the question that Hari is trying to get at. So flash fill will work wherever there is a pattern that you want Excel to actually replicate. Okay. And Excel will replicate that pattern for you. But if there's no pattern, then there's nothing that Excel can replicate for you, right? So that's a great question there. Thank you so much. Okay. And I'm going to come to abbreviations now. Okay. So very quickly here, you see all of these names. How many times, do you have to actually create abbreviations that you need to put on addresses or couriers? So if I say JA, John Arnold, and I say MC for Mary Cynthia, Excel gives me the suggestion, right? You just saw the suggestion pop up there, right? So I say MC and I can select all of this and go down to the bottom and I can say flash fill. But not only that, you'll notice that Excel flash fill understands that there's a gentleman called Prashant who does not have a last name. So it just sticks with P, and then Rasputin, it sticks with R. Okay, it does not try to say PP or RR. It kind of applies that intelligence to say you're looking for the abbreviations of the names. Now, one of you asked the question, what about concatenation, right? So what is concatenation? Okay, so for those of us that are not, sort of technically minded or have not programmed in their life before, you're seeing this for the first time. Concatenation is just joining two pieces of text into one text. So if I have a first name and a last name here, right? if I had to insert here and if I had to say, you know, this is the first name and this over here is the last name, and I need to send out invitations to them, and I need to say, Roseanne Sargent, welcome to the party. So I can type this out once for Excel. Okay, and then when I drag this down to the bottom and I say flash fill, boom, concatenation is done, right? So flash fill can achieve concatenation. You do not need to use the function in Excel called concatenate. This is the function that one of you were talking about, right? You could, you know, use that function as well, right? But you don't actually need to do it anymore. Right, so some of you like to do it the old-fashioned way, right? You say this is the first text, and then you say comma, this is the second text, and then, you know, you close the bracket and then you do this, right? But now you don't need to do that because of flash fill. Okay, so can everyone practice this and let me know once you've actually practiced this, please? I know some of you will practice later. All right, so I've got some comments. Let me just see what I've got here. So I've got it done from, okay, Subhabrata's practiced it, okay. Okay, I hope the others have also practiced, okay. Can everyone confirm that you practiced this? Those of you that have, you know, okay, so Poonam, you might have an older version of Excel. You need to have 2013. So please do get Excel 2013, folks. It's very, very useful, this particular function, okay. All right, so I'll show you now a more complex application of flash fill. This you can practice later. Okay, so I'm coming to the Visa card platinum statement. Okay, this is the last tab in the Excel sheet. Okay, this is the Visa card platinum statement. Okay, so I think RP is also in the webinar. Let's all say hello to RP. Hi RP, welcome to the webinar.
Hi everyone, how are you?
All right, so everyone can say hello to RP. Thanks a lot RP for joining the webinar.
Sure, Amit, please continue. Thank you.
Right, so I think we've got some people saying hello to you there. Okay, fantastic. So folks, we're going to now use flash fill for a more complex, you know, application, right? So all of the questions you asked earlier will be addressed in this particular example of flash fill, and I think everyone's saying hello to RP. It's really popular here in this neighborhood. Okay, so you can see here in this credit card statement, right, that this is a real credit card statement that I've just modified a little bit for us in this class, that there's a couple of mistakes going on here, right? Okay, what you'll see is that there's the amount here in rupees 627, but then over here it says 100 CR. It's a credit card statement of a human being, so it's unlikely that CR is crores. So if it is not crores, what do you think CR is my question to you. So what is this CR that you see inside this cell? Okay. And one of you have got it right? Subha is credit. Anish and Subhabrata got it. Asta got it. It's credit. Now my challenge is some of these transactions have credit written, but the debit transactions don't have something written. So what should have been written there if it was a debit transaction? If it is not CR, what should I write here after 627 for a debit transaction? Those of you that are in accounts do this every day, right? You use DR. There you go. Right now I'm going to demo to you how you can use flash fill to actually pull out meaningful information. So the first thing is I'll type amount new, okay, and I'm going to pull out 627, okay, I'm going to pull out 100, I'm going to pull out 306. Now notice that it actually gave me a hint there, but I didn't take the hint, okay. I select all three of these and then I drag it to the bottom, right, of this credit card statement, and then I say flash fill. And the moment I do that, boom, it pulls out all of the numbers, it removes the CR and it cleans up my data. So I'm using Excel to actually clean up my data, pull out the numbers. Now I'll do something even more interesting, okay? So watch this. The type of transaction, okay, and I use this here, I say TRN type. And what kind of transaction is this 627? It's a debit transaction, DR. So I write DR over there. Now notice this, there's no DR in this Excel sheet. I'm actually writing a missing value, okay? And I write a CR over here, okay? And then finally third time I write a DR for Excel. Now I explain to Excel that, hey, look, if there's nothing written, I want a DR. If there's a CR, I want a CR. If there's nothing written, I want a DR. So this is the input and this is the output I want from Excel using flash fill. Okay. So let's see what Excel does now. So I'll go way to the bottom and then I say flash fill. Check it out. So Excel has been able to understand that these are credit transactions and that these are debit transactions, and it has actually populated missing data for you. Okay. Now isn't that cool? Right? Can I get comments from everyone? I know it's a long class and you guys are attending a class for the first time, right? Online probably. Okay, so Ambuj says great, cool says Subarbata, right? So nice one. Now more, I'm not going to stop here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually use column C here and pull out the city in which the transaction happened. So I'll say Delhi and I'll say Bangalore. Now here we come to the question that one of you asked, right? What if it's a complex sort of data? Can Excel understand, right? So let me pick up, for example, just Delhi. Okay, let me just type here Delhi and I'm going to drag this to the bottom and see if it works. Okay, I say flash fill and you notice it has not worked. Excel was not able to understand with just Delhi what I wanted. Okay, it actually has pulled out India for me. That's not what I wanted. So what do? I come to India. The first place where Excel has made a mistake is in cell number C22. So I click on C22 and I see if I can make that Bangalore. Okay, I type Bangalore and I press enter. The moment I press enter, it makes a few corrections, but still it has not learned. Okay, so Excel is being a bad boy here. So I'm going to type Shimoga now for the third time and see if it can learn now. Now it looks like Excel kind of learned what I wanted, except over here, right? So I might have to just teach Excel till a point where Excel understands what I want from this data, right? And over here it's been able to pull out Hampi. Okay, it has been able to pull out Udupi, but it has not pulled out Mysore for some reason. Yeah, okay. So sometimes you've got to teach Excel what you want till a point where it understands the mistakes and it's going to correct this for you, and now it has actually made this correction for you. You've been able to pull out all of the cities. Okay, so this is new, right? What you're beginning to see is that your relationship with Excel has changed a little bit, right? What you now see is that you're probably the teacher, okay, and Excel is actually your student and is trying to learn from you, right, using pattern matching, which is a machine learning algorithm, and implement that in your entire data set. Okay, how does Excel understand this when we have a string of text as our data? Okay, so I'll have to mail you the algorithm, Manmeet. Let me just unmute you for a second. Okay, so what I'm saying, Manmeet, is that it's a very complex algorithm, which is a pattern matching algorithm that you may have come across if you've done a computer engineering, and it's actually like a 4-year research paper with a lot of mathematics in it. But I can mail that across to all of you. It's written by a Sindhi gentleman who worked at Microsoft. So I hope that helps. And it's a pattern matching is basically about text, right? So okay. Right, so I'm going to move ahead now, and so this is flash fill. Now you can use this data much more meaningfully, right? So you can pull out the cities, you can pull out the dates and all of that, and now you can do a pivot, and you can even do a power pivot or a power map on this and analyze this particular data, visually on a power map, which we will do in the next class, right? So you can use flash fill for missing values as well, and you can actually teach flash fill. So this is really important. You keep teaching Excel till a point where it refines the output to your satisfaction, right? So that's what you can do with flash fill. Okay, so we'll close this and we're going to open our next exercise, which is exercise 3, right? Let's see if we can get exercise 3 open. Layered shortcuts. This is fairly easy. It's not too complex. Okay, so I'm going to keep it light. I've got a hand raised somewhere. Who do I have here? Okay, I think Nida's got a hand raised. Okay, yeah, Nida?
Like you said that we need to teach Excel about this flash fill. Does it work across the sheets, or it just works for a particular table?
Yeah, so it works for a particular table and it looks at whatever is on the left hand side in that entire table. So it works for multiple columns of one table in one sheet. It doesn't necessarily work across sheets. Yeah. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All right. So folks, we've come to this exercise 3 and this is really easy. We're going to learn about layered shortcuts. Okay. So what's a layered shortcut? Again, a lot of the things that I talk about aren't things that you have not done, but it's probably that I have a technical name for it, while you've actually been using it anyway in your career without a technical name. So what I'm talking about here is layered shortcuts. Okay. So if you look at layered shortcuts, I'm going to give you a couple of examples, right? The first one is you go to sheet number 1 and you click on any number, for example 6, right? And you say control A once. When you say control A, the first time it only selects the data in the table. It doesn't select the whole table. Why? Because I've inserted a table in Excel. When you insert a table and you say control A, it will select your data. It won't select the headers. Now, the second time that you actually say control A, it's actually going to select the headers as well. And the third time you press control A, it will select your entire sheet. Now, how does this behave differently? So when I click on New York, when I say control A, it selects location and participants as well because I have not inserted a table. But the moment I insert a table, I can use layered shortcuts. So when I say control A once, it will pick up the data. When I say control A 2 times, it will pick up the headers. When I say control A 3 times, it will pick up the entire sheet. Okay? So this is known as a layered shortcut. Can everyone practice this once? Just click on 6 and say control A and control A 3 times and tell me you've practiced this. Just say yes when you practiced it. Okay, so Swami's practiced it. How about everybody else? Okay. Poonam, Anish practiced. Everybody else? Come on, keep going folks, everybody. Quickly. I know we're approaching 10 o'clock. I will not trouble you too much more. Okay. Alright, so what is the implication of layered shortcuts? This is a really important topic, right? So why should I care? I mean, okay, Amit's saying there's layered shortcuts, but why should I care, right? So here's sort of the implication. I'll show you one more layered shortcut, right, in a short while. So the second layered shortcut I'll show you is control space, okay? So let me just write it here on the board for you, right? So it's CTRL control plus space. So right now we're going to do control space layered shortcut and learn about that layered shortcut as well. Okay. So I'm going to click on 6 here. I'll press control space. The first time I do that, it picks up the entire data in this column. The second time I do that, it picks up the entire data in this column, including the header. The third time I do that, it picks up the entire C column in the Excel sheet. Okay. So this is important because when we copy stuff, we need to either copy the data or the data plus the header and go and paste it in some other Excel sheet. Okay, so probably go in some other Excel sheet and go and paste that data, right? So we need to be able to copy the data very effectively and paste it in some other Excel sheet. And that's why we need these layered shortcuts, right? So I hope everyone has practiced control space layered shortcut. Before I move ahead to the next implication, the important implication of layered shortcuts. Okay, so check this out, right? So here's the reason why layered shortcuts can be really important in Excel. Now you've got an Excel sheet with many errors right over here. So I'm going to zoom into this Excel sheet right now. Okay, so as you can see over here, like there's many errors in this particular Excel sheet that you need to resolve. Okay, all of these little green guys here are actually errors. Now I'll come to why an error is green in color, because it should actually be red in color, right? But actually errors are coded green in color in Excel. Okay, so now if I need to fix all of these errors, we talked a while ago about formulas, and in formulas I go to error checking on the top and I go to error checking, and then it starts asking me to fix each one of these errors and convert it to a number. So basically this is text, this is number stored as text, and that's the error. So I have to convert it to a number. So now I can start converting and I fix all of these errors one by one. But if I've got many errors in an Excel sheet, how many times will I keep doing this, right? So suppose I have to bulk convert all of these, right? So I'll put this up on the screen. Suppose I have to do a bulk conversion, okay, of all of the numbers stored as text to numbers. How do I achieve this bulk conversion? And this is where layered shortcuts will help you. So the way you do it is you click on any error. For example, this 23452. Say Control A once. So you can fix it right here, right? But this will only fix one error. So suppose you say Control A once. You can actually click on this and you can convert to number, and both of the errors get fixed together, right? So I'll press Control Z. Now suppose I want to fix all of the errors in the Excel sheet. So all I need to do is I press Control A once, it selects both of these, but I press Control A once more and it selects the entire sheet. Now you'll see there's a small little guy here on the top left corner of your screen, and there's an opportunity for you to convert all of the text stored, all of the numbers stored as text into numbers right there. And when I click on that, the entire Excel sheet has been fixed one shot. Even if it has like a million errors, they will get corrected one shot if you use Control A, the layered shortcut, 3 times on a particular error. Okay. So again, to practice, just click on the error, say Control A until it selects the entire sheet, and then convert to number. And that's it. Right? Isn't that awesome? Can everyone practice this, please? Please tell me if I need to repeat this, right? It's really important you get a hang of this. What if the sheet has text also? No, so it will fix the errors, right, Hari? So it will look at that particular error and it will fix that particular error for the whole sheet. If the others are text, they will not get converted to numbers. The text will remain the text. Thanks, that's a great question, right? Can everyone practice? Okay. Okay, so you're learning to fix one error one shot by using layered shortcuts in Excel. So guys, we're going really deep into how Excel actually works and how it's been programmed. Okay. All right, great. So I hope we've all done with exercise number 3, and we'll go to now exercise number 4, which is the last exercise for the day, right? Okay. All right, so exercise 4 is actually some performance ratings, and this is, over here, we've got some performance ratings. We've got names, titles, business titles, ratings. We've got whether a promotion request has been submitted for these people or not. So Charlie is a manager with a rating of 3 and a promotion request has been submitted for him. His tenure is 22 months and he's actually from Kolkata. And you've got all of these performance ratings and the tenure of people in this organization. The first thing I want you to do, and when I look at it from an Excel SOP standpoint, right, statement, standard operating procedure, is that you want to first convert any data you get into a table. So this is really important. If you leave with one thought today, one is that please convert your data into a table. The second is flash fill. These are really important things that you learned, concepts that we've talked about today. Okay. So I've got a question here. Okay, so Sumit says I have not got the mail of exercise 4. Do you guys have exercise 4? Actually, it's there in the, you can download exercise 4, Sumit, right here. Everyone has it. It's there inside, the handout section. So can you just download it from handout, Sumit? So you'll see that in the handout section inside the webinar. You can download it from the webinar. Let me just quickly unmute Sumit and see. Okay. Hey Sumit, I've got you unmuted. You can download it from the webinar itself, Sumit. Okay, you got
Yes,
it?
sir, I got it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. So very quickly, folks, I'll take you through the next feature, which is slicers, and this is the last one for the day. Thank you so much for your patience. So first thing, I want you to select the data using Control A and Control T. T for Tom, convert it to a table. Okay, first things you do is that you convert data to a table, right? And now you can actually do a lot of things with this, right? We'll talk about slicers, but what I'm going to do is see if I can insert, a pivot chart and a pivot table for this data, right? So I've created a pivot for this data, and let's see if I want to see the number of people who have a particular rating, right? Let's say a rating of 1, 2, 3, or 4. So the way I do that is very simple. I'll go back, right? And I'll go back even further. I'll go back even further. Okay. So for all of you that are seeing this for the first time, I say Control A once and I say Control T and I convert this to a table. Now I go up to Insert, right on top next to File, Home, and I go to Pivot Chart and Pivot Table. I click on that and then I say OK. Now I've got a chart over here and I've got a table over here, right? So what I do is I say I want to count the number of employees. So the best way to do that is I can count the number of names that occur, and I want to look at their ratings, right? So I put that in the x-axis. Now I can see the total number of employees who have a particular rating, 1, 2, 3, and 4, 1 being sort of the best rating and 4 probably being the lowest rating. And now I want to add a slicer to this, okay? So suppose I want to add a slicer for tenure. So I right click on tenure and I say add as slicer. There you go. Now the moment I add a slicer, when I click tenure 9 months, I notice everybody got a rating of 3. When I click 10 months, I notice everybody got a rating of 3. 11 months? Well, looks like everybody got a rating of 3, which means meets expectations, right? And then 12 months, well, okay, now once they hit 1 year in the company, they've got a rating of 1 and 2, and then 14 months is 3 and 15 months is, so looks like if I were to click on 9, 10, 11, 12 together, and how did I do that? I used the control button, okay? So press the control button and click on 9, 10, 11, 12 together, and I actually understand that people actually have different ratings, right? Tenure in months can impact ratings differently, right? If I go up to 11 months, I notice everybody has only a rating of 3. So which means that in this organization, anyone who's new and has less than 1 year experience seems to be getting a rating of 3, which is meets expectations. But for the folks that are beyond 3 years of experience, let me see beyond 1 year of experience, then I have a normal sort of a distribution, right? So one, bias that I'm beginning to see just by using the slicer, some clear and easy descriptive analytics that we're able to do about this is that it looks like, people who are less than 12 months in the system seem to get a rating of 3, which is that they just meet the expectations. Okay. And it looks like people who are greater than 12 months, they actually seem to get many different ratings. So it's actually a normal curve. So this is something that I have to work with the leadership and provide them this insight that, look, there seems to be a small challenge here, right? I mean, it's not fair that everybody less than 12 months should get a rating of 3. There are probably some rock stars there who did very well in their last companies, but they're just getting a default rating of 3, which is a challenge, right? So slicers can help you achieve this, okay? So can everybody please add this slicer, right? And you can even do it right there in your data. So if I were to show you right here, in your data, you have the option of inserting a slicer here as well, okay? But if you go to insert, pivot, chart and table, and then you create your chart by dragging name to values, by dragging rating to axis, and then right clicking on tenure and add as a slicer. So can everyone try this, please? You need to mail me this output, right? So I'll wait for everyone to practice this. This is our last exercise for the day, folks. So thanks a ton for your cooperation so far. All right, so let me just see, I've got some comments. Okay, so Manmeet has an insight to share for slices. I'll unmute you right away. Just give me a second here, Manmeet. Yes, Manmeet, I've unmuted you. Could you please unmute yourself from your end as well? Yes, please, go ahead. Well, I don't know if you're saying something, Manmeet. Yeah. Okay, some challenges with your mic, Manmeet. So could you please type out the insight that you had to share for slicers? Okay, so I'll wait for Manmeet to share an insight, right? And in the meanwhile, you'll find that you can uncover, many pieces, interesting pieces of information using slicers, right? For example, if you look at the rating of the people who have been submitted for promotion. So if I put a slicer for promotion request and probably delete the slicer here for tenure in months, right? Go ahead and just delete that slicer. And I say for those who promotion request was submitted, I find everybody is rating 3. Oh yes, so Manmeet says it's a very useful tool to connect 2 or more pivots. Thank you so much. Absolutely right. So if you've got 2 pivots, you can use slicers to connect the pivots. So these are slightly advanced things where a single variable can act as a filter for the 2 or more pivots. Absolutely, very good point there, right? So if you have employee ID into 2 pivots, you can use the slicer to act as the bridge between the 2 pivots that have employee ID in them. So thank you so much. Okay, so you'll notice here that everybody who has been submitted for promotion is actually rated 3. So what's happening here is, right, that there's a promotion budget and there's a merit increase budget or a salary increase budget. And what's happening is some managers want to promote people, but they've rated them 3 so that they can give them, a small part of the merit increase budget, but use the promotion budget to give them a higher increase. So this is unfair to the employees because if they're getting promoted, they should probably be rated 1 or 2. So this is something that we have to actually look into and raise to the leadership saying that, hey, there's another challenge here, right? And this is something that we've got to put together in our presentation and say that discrepancy, right? Discrepancy in rating for promotion cases, right? So, descriptive analytics becomes really easy first glance using some of these functionalities, that like slicers that help you actually do this. And what Manmeet is saying is if there are two tables, right, and both the tables have, for example, employee ID in them, then if you use a slicer, in between the table for a common variable, for example, the employee ID, then you do not need to do a VLOOKUP, right? The slicer will take care of that, right? So that's a very good use of that particular functionality over there. All right, so great. And I know I'm 3 minutes over time. I want to thank everybody, right? So I'll unmute every one of you. So, hey, Hari, thank you. Thank you, Manmeet, Nazia, Nida, Poonam. Thanks, Sumit.
Thank you.
Thanks, Swami.
Thank
So I've unmuted everyone. Akash, thanks a lot. Right, Ankit, Asta, thanks everybody. And right, the next class is actually next week. So it's at the same time, which is 7 p.m. And RP, do you want to talk about what you will cover in the next class?
Sure, Amit. Yeah. So, guys, in the next class, what we'll be doing is we'll be beginning with the basic statistics, right? So, as you remember, we talked about, how we would look at doing the mean, mode, median. So, we'll be beginning with those basic concepts, and then we'll taking it forward from that point on. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. And now what I'm going to do, folks, is that I'm going to create a page for this batch, which is the learner page. Not the one that you've actually got already, but I'm going to create a page called Learner Central. And the way it will be is that you'll find the data for the next class in that particular page. So what is it going to look like? Let me just see if I can pull up the last batch learner page. So just give me a second here. While I pull up the learner page for one of the batches. Okay. Right.
So while you're doing that, Amit, there's a question from Poonam, and she's having some problems in downloading the SAS software. So Poonam, what we'll be doing is, anybody else, not just Poonam, anybody else who is having a challenge in getting the SAS software or our software installed, we will be having a person named Shrey from our team work with you directly and make sure that you have these softwares installed on your system and good to go, right? So just hang on, Poonam. We will help you through those activities. But in any case, for the next 2 to 3 classes, you do not need to have the SAS software. What you need to have is basically the Excel and R, and that we will be making sure that everybody has functional on their system before we move forward. Yeah?
Yes, so that is useful. And the other piece I wanted to share with you now is, Poonam, yeah, thanks a lot. So this is the learner page, right, for the last batch. And I'll create a page like this. Now it's really important that you understand that even to join the class, you need to come to this page. So you'll find the links right here on this page to join the class. After the class has finished, we will upload the video and you'll find a link called view video. Okay, and if you want to download the data, you'll find a link called download practice data, or if you want to look at the presentation, you'll find a link called look at the presentation, right? So I'll open up some of these links for you right now very quickly and just quickly show you what it looks like. So for example, the Excel class today, if you click on download practice data, it will actually show you the 4 files that we worked on right now. Okay, and if you say view video, it will open up the video in YouTube and you can actually look at the entire video, right, and practice along with the video. So here you go. These are things that we have practiced today available on YouTube. Okay. And similarly, for the next class, basics of statistics for Excel, you already have access to this page. You can look at the materials. I'll upload it and I'll create a fresh page for this group here. If you want to watch the last class that happened, you have access to this link. You can watch the video right here by clicking on basics of statistics for analytics.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So
just one point, Amit, on the basic of statistics. So people who want to really go take a look at the video or read through the PPT, it will be very, very helpful, right? because everything that we'll be doing in the future, so including, some of the sophisticated predictive model that we're going to build, will be hinging upon, what we are discussing. So how would you define a variable, right? So for example, what is a numerical variable, what is a categorical variable, or character variable, right? And what is the difference that it really makes in terms of the modeling and everything else that happens down the road. So I'll request all of you, if you have the bandwidth, to go through the video, so that when we are actually looking into those PPTs and going through the session, you'll be much more fast in that process, and that will really enable the learning, absorption at a higher pace at your end. So it really basically is what my request is to all of you guys, to spend some time going through the basics of statistics PPT as well as the video. And once we get in the class, you will exactly know what is a normal distribution, what is a uniform distribution, what is a Poisson distribution, for example, and how it really plays a role in everything that we do down the road in the statistics and data science. Yeah?
All right, folks. So thank you so much. I've actually sent you the link for the video, and all of you have the link to this page, the learner page of the last batch, right? I've mailed it to all of you. It's called the learner page, and I'll be creating a similar link for you for your batch, which will be called Learner Central. So this is the link to the learner page. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, and we're closing out for the day, and look forward to seeing you next Saturday evening. Signing out from equiskill.com. Goodbye. Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
good night, good day.